I awoke with the grain in my palm and the chisel at rest. A plank on the bench and a knot in its chest. The kettle sang thin while the daylight spread, and I laid out my colors like a deck of cards red. Ash in the board, oak in the flame, pine for the frame, and a nick in my name. Then the first strike rang, then the second one too, like the whole old room knew what my hands came to do. One for the sawdust, two for the stain, three for the brush and the breath through the grain, four for the resin, clear as rain. Count it out, say it again. One for the sawdust, two for the stain, three for the brush and the breath through the grain, four for the resin, clear as rain. Say it loud, say it proud, say it again. I shook the tin lid, I cracked the seal, gold in the jar with a slow blue peel. I poured that amber where the daylight bent, and it moved like a river through the cracks I'd mended. My thumb wore red and my sleeve wore green, my nails caught paint from the year between, and every small tap from the mallet's face got time like a heel on a timbered floor pane. One for the sawdust, two for the stain, three for the brush and the breath through the grain, four for the resin, clear as rain. Count it out, say it again. One for the sawdust, two for the stain, three for the brush and the breath through the grain, four for the resin, clear as rain. Say it loud, say it proud, say it again. I cut my line from a crooked old board, found a song in the wedge and the bite of the cord. The room went warm when the spoke shape bit, and the offcuts danced in the corner of it. There was red on the rag and white on the rim, a little green smear on the edge of the trim, and every tool on the table had a story to tell, like a prayer in the
One second. Okay, there we go. Sorry about that. Well, I guess I was starting a little bit early. We're going to be working on all the black in this, and then I want to get a couple other colors done, but it's Hogwarts Crest. So let me adjust my upper camera a little, because I realize it's off way hard. So that's what we're working on. Like usual, I have a playlist of videos we'll react to. Tonight I'm going to start us off on a Darth Theorist, which is a Star Wars video. The topic looked interesting to me when I added it. He just put it out today. So go subscribe to him if you like the story. Like all of our videos, both on the ticker that'll show up here in a second. And in the description should be a link to the YouTube playlist of videos that I may react to tonight. Of course, we're not going to get near through any, not even half of them, even if I were to finish this and go till 8 o'clock in the morning. But it's just stuff that isn't been in the news the last few days that looked interesting enough that I put it in the playlist of 116 videos. So we'll be going to this. As you see here, we will be reacting to what if Anakin Skywalker was Jabba's slave instead of Watto's?
Darth Theorist.
Rise.
What if Anakin Skywalker was Jabba the Hutt's slave instead of Watto's? Let's explore the depths of it in the video. If you enjoy deep dives into Harry Potter or Game of Thrones, check out our sister channels, Half-Blood Theorist and Three-Eyed Theorist. Links are in the description. At the center of the blood-stained arena floor of Jabba's palace stands 9-year-old Anakin Skywalker, grasping a sharpened metal rod in his hands. Across from him, a Gamorrean twice his size circles with a crude axe, while a crowd of smugglers and bounty hunters packed into the viewing gallery above pound the railing and scream for the kill. Anakin has survived many fights in this pit. He doesn't understand how. Something warns him before each strike, something that buzzes at the base of his skull and moves his body before his mind catches up. As the Gamorrean swings, Anakin drops beneath the axe and drives the rod into the gap between the creature's armor plates. The crowd roars. Jabba laughs from his throne above as more blood spills across the arena. Later that night, Anakin presses his face against the bars of his holding cell beneath the kitchens. Shmi Skywalker kneels on the other side and reaches through the gap to touch his cheek with her fingers.
My lovely son, you survived.
I always survive. When will we get out of this place, Mom?
One day someone will come for us, Annie. I believe that.
One day I will get us out of here. I will have a big house and a ship, and you will never work another day. We will have everything we ever wanted.
Yes, my child. We will.
Anakin closes his eyes and lets her warmth hold him together for the few minutes of the guards allowing them to be together before dragging him back to the cell pits. The arena is the only world this boy knows, and violence is the only language it speaks. Qui-Gon Jinn arrives on Tatooine with a damaged hyperdrive and a queen escort in tow. Within an hour of entering Mos Espa, a local trader mentions the fights at Jabba's palace. He mentions a human child who keeps winning bouts against opponents 3 times his size, and Qui-Gon feels something shift in the Force so powerfully that he stops walking mid-stride. He infiltrates the palace as a spectator during one of the major tournaments, and the moment the boy steps into the arena, Qui-Gon feels the Force surge through the chamber so violently that he grips the railing to steady himself. Every blow he dodges by a fraction of a second carries the unmistakable current of Force-assisted reflexes. Qui-Gon has trained beside masters for decades, and none of them have ever displayed the air around them in the way this 9-year-old does, without even knowing he's doing it. He spends the next 3 days gathering information while studying the palace layout. He talks to the
Why
pit
does it keep
handlers,
doing
kitchen
this?
workers, and the petty traders who service the palace supply runs. He learns the boy's name is Anakin Skywalker. He learns the boy's mother, Shmi, works in the kitchens, and that Jabba keeps them separated to control them both. He cannot get close enough to Anakin to draw a blood sample. All he has is what the Force is telling him, and the Force has never spoken to him this loudly. He maps the guard rotations, identifies weak points in the perimeter, and plants mind tricks in the head of 6 different sentries. When the next major tournament draws every enforcer in the arena galleries, Qui-Gon slips through the lower corridors and reaches the kitchen quarters first. Shmi backs against the wall when he enters because a robed stranger in Jabba's palace means danger. Qui-Gon raises both hands and tells her quickly and quietly that he is a Jedi, that her son carries a gift in the Force stronger than anything he's ever encountered, and that he can get the boy to safety if she helps him reach the pit cells. Shmi studies his face for a long moment and sees something there that she trusts. She quietly leads him through the service tunnels to the lower holding area where the fighters are kept between bouts. Anakin is awake when they reach his cell, and Qui-Gon cuts through the lock with his lightsaber. The hiss of melting metal triggers a corridor alarm 2 levels above them, and the sound of boots begin echoing down the stairwells. Qui-Gon grabs Anakin and turns for Shmi, but the main sentry gate at the far end of the tunnel is already grinding shut on its automatic lockdown cycle, and Shmi remains trapped in her section of the walls.
Go. Take him and go now.
Mom, no! We can cut through it. Come with us.
There's no time.
I won't leave you here.
It won't be forever. You'll come back for me. You said it yourself. You'll free me, and we'll have a big house and with a starship. Now go.
Enjoying the story? You can listen to these on the go. Search Star Theorist or Three-Eyed Theorist on your favorite podcast service. Links are in the description. Now, back to it. Qui-Gon lifts the boy onto his shoulder, and they run through the lower tunnels as alarms shriek behind them. Blaster fire chases them across the open desert toward the waiting ship, and Qui-Gon deflects 3 bolts with his lightsaber before they clear the landing ramp. The ship lifts off, and Anakin screams for his mother until his voice gives out. The battle on Naboo follows. Anakin helps where he can, fighting the droid army inside the palace and saving lives. But the space battle costs the Naboo fleet heavily, and ground forces absorb casualties that could have been prevented. Qui-Gon faces Maul in the Theed reactor complex, and Obi-Wan watches through the energy gates as his master takes a Sith blade through the chest. The Council examines Anakin on Coruscant and finds everything Qui-Gon described. The raw power is undeniable. The danger is equally clear. The child carries years of trauma and violence in every reflex, and his connection to the Force is tangled with fear and survival instinct so deep that the masters exchange uneasy glances across the chamber. The Council agrees reluctantly, and every member in the chamber understands they are welcoming something they cannot fully control. 4 years pass, and Anakin grows into a capable Padawan with terrifying combat instincts. He masters lightsaber forms faster than any student Obi-Wan has ever seen, but every sparring match carries an edge that makes his training partners uncomfortable. He fights to survive because the arena taught him that losing means dying, and that programming runs deeper than any Jedi lesson. During a group training exercise, a fellow Padawan named True Veld presses Anakin too hard on a disarm sequence. True scores a hit across Anakin's ribs, and the shock of pain triggers something old and automatic in Anakin's body. His vision narrows, and his muscles lock into the patterns the arena drilled into him. He strikes True across the temple with a hit of his training saber with enough force-enhanced power to fracture the boy's skull. True collapses on the training floor, while the other Padawans back away in silence, and medics rush him to the healing ward. True dies 6 hours later from swelling in his brain. Anakin sits outside the ward, and Obi-Wan finds him there, shaking. Obi-Wan holds his Padawan and feels the boy trembling against him. He knows the council will not see a traumatized child when they convene tomorrow morning. Mace Windu leads the council's response with the severity Anakin expected. They strip his lightsaber privileges, restrict him to supervised training sessions, and place monitoring crystals on his wrist that track his movement through the temple. Senior knights shadow him during meditation periods and report his emotional state to the council weekly. With so many restrictions, Anakin feels the walls closing in with a familiarity that turns his stomach. Powerful beings controlling where he walks, where he trains, what he touches. Different robes, same cage. Obi-Wan argues for leniency in every session, and Mace overrules him every time. Chancellor Palpatine requests meetings with the young Padawan under the pretense of Republic interest in Force-sensitive individuals. The Council permits it because refusing the Chancellor carries political costs they cannot afford. Palpatine studies Anakin carefully during their first conversation and immediately discards his usual fatherly approach. This boy has been manipulated by authority figures his entire life and will spot that tactic in seconds, so Palpatine offers something far more dangerous instead.
They took you from one cage and placed you in another. They called it discipline. Jabba called it training. The methods differ, but the principle is identical.
Anakin says that the Jedi rescued him.
Did they now? A boy with the greatest force potential ever recorded, locked behind monitoring protocols and stripped of his weapon. Does that sound like rescue to you, Anakin?
Anakin wants to argue, but the monitoring crystals pulse at his wrist. Every word Palpatine speaks maps onto something he had already felt in the corridors of the temple. Palpatine never pushes. He plants the seed and lets the council water it for him. The incidents accumulate over the following 3 years. Anakin breaks curfew repeatedly to send encrypted transmissions to Tatooine, searching for any trace of Shmi. He gets into a physical fight with a Jedi Knight named Drekka, who calls him Jabba's pet. Sending Drekka to the healing ward with 3 broken ribs and a fractured jaw, the council convenes an emergency session.
Skywalker has assaulted a fellow Jedi for the second time. He violates curfew regularly. His emotional state remains volatile despite years of intervention. The council must decide what further action to take. He's just a boy, Master. He is a traumatized child responding to direct provocation. Drekka insulted his history as a slave.
His trauma does not excuse the pattern. Other Padawans are afraid of him. Knights avoid him in the corridors. Maybe your knights should learn not to call people property to their face.
You are not helping yourself, Skywalker. A Jedi controls his response regardless of provocation.
A Jedi also doesn't mock a fellow student's suffering. Where is Drekka's hearing? Where is his discipline? Or do the rules only apply when someone like me breaks them?
Valid. The boy's frustration is. Address the culture within our ranks, we must. But violence, the answer cannot be.
Skywalker, the Council has given you every opportunity to adapt. Supervised training, counseling, leniency after the first incident. At what point do we accept that the Order cannot give you what you need? The Order has never tried to give me what I need. You've treated me like a prisoner since the day I walked through these doors, and yet you wonder why I act like one. Fine. At this point, I have no other choice. I move for expulsion.
Master, you cannot be serious.
The boy's words carry pain, but his actions carry consequences. He killed one Padawan before.
His pattern of defiance escalates with each incident. I support Master Windu's motion.
As do I. We have exhausted our options.
Rush to this decision, we should not. Lost the boy may be. If cast out, he is.
He is already lost, Master Yoda. Keeping him here puts others at risk.
The vote carries. Anakin Skywalker is expelled from the Jedi Order at 16 years old. He walks down the temple steps empty-handed and alone. Yoda watches from the high window of the council chambers. Obi-Wan sets Anakin up in a small apartment in the lower districts of Coruscant and visits every day. He brings food and reading material and tries to continue Anakin's training informally in the cramped rooms. Anakin tolerates it because Obi-Wan is the last person in the galaxy who has not given up on him. But without temple walls or council oversight, Palpatine's access becomes unlimited. He visits the apartment himself now, with meals and conversation, and each visit carries the same quiet message. Everyone else left, but I stayed. One morning, Obi-Wan arrives at the apartment door and finds it unlocked. The rooms are empty. Anakin's few possessions sit untouched on the table. The bed is made. No note, no message, and no trace. Obi-Wan stands in silence and feels something tear inside his chest because the boy he promised Qui-Gon he would protect has vanished into a galaxy that has already hurt him in every way imaginable. 3 years dissolve into mercenary contracts and cargo runs and long stretches of silence in borrowed ships. Anakin drifts through the Outer Rim at 19 years old, with untrained force power crackling through his body, but not without purpose. Every credit earned goes into a hidden account. Every job taken brings him closer to the sum that might buy his mother's freedom from whatever hole Jabba sold her into. He has a number in his head, and he's almost there. Then his vision about his mother begins. Shmi screams in chains, reaching for him through darkness while his name tears from her throat. The visions came every night and grow sharper with each passing week until Anakin wakes soaked in sweat and his fists clenched and the walls of whatever ship he occupies trembling from unconscious force tremors. He sets course for Tatooine. Jabba's palace still squats against the desert horizon, but Shmi is gone. Anakin spends days tracking her trail through settlements and trading posts, and piece by piece, the story assembles itself from the mouths of moisture farmers and junk traders who remember the woman with the kind eyes. After Anakin escaped, Jabba punished Shmi by selling her to a spice mining operation in the deep Tatooine wastes. They worked her in the tunnels until her body gave out. She died within 2 years of his rescue, buried in an unmarked grave somewhere beneath the sand he is standing on. Anakin stands in the empty wastes outside Mos Espa, where locals say the mining camp once operated. Wind pushed sand across his boots, and the twin suns beat down on the back of his neck. He kneels slowly and presses his palms flat against the ground, as though he might feel some trace of her beneath it, as though the planet still holds some memory of the woman who pushed him through the bars and told him to go. Anakin attacks Jabba's outer territories. He hits a slaving outpost at the edge of the Dune Sea and tears through the compound with a stolen blaster in one hand and the Force ripping doors off their hinges around him. Every enforcer dies. Every slave walks free. He hits the next outpost and does it again. And word spreads across the wastes that someone is dismantling Jabba's operation one piece at a time. But Jabba's empire stretches across an entire sector, and Anakin is one man running on grief. When he assaults a major fortress near Mos Espa, the Hutt's forces meet him with overwhelming numbers. The bounty hunters pin him in a crossfire while mercenaries close from the flanks. He takes blaster burns across the shoulder and back. A vibroblade opens his ribs to the bone, and he goes down in the sand with his vision fading to black. He awakens in a darkened hut, lying on a stone slab. In an effort to save him, freed slaves from his earlier raids dragged his body to their mud brick settlements. Anakin drifts in and out of consciousness as a fever burns through his body and infection spreads throughout his wounds while locals pour water down his throat and pack his cuts with whatever salves they can find. A hooded figure arrives at the settlement on the third night. The face stays hidden beneath the cloth, and the voice carries a strange resonance that presses against Anakin's senses through the fog of his fever. The figure places both hands over Anakin's wounds and channels something into him that is cold and sharp and wrong, but it kills the infection and closes the worst of the bleeding and pulls him back from the edge.
The galaxy's powerful have wronged you, Anakin. The Jedi and the Republic protect the systems that keep your mother in chains because those systems serve their interests. Who are you? Someone who is also cast aside. Someone who learned that the institutions we trust are the ones that could hurt us most.
The figure is Sidious. He leaves a red-bladed lightsaber on the slab beside Anakin and disappears into the desert night. Anakin wraps his fingers around the hilt and feels the cold energy humming through the crystal. Some part of him knows he should let go of it, but the rest of him is too broken and too tired to care. Sidious returns over the following months, always cloaked, always measured. He trains Anakin in combat, forms the Jedi archives would never permit, and teaches him techniques that channel fury into focus and pain into power. The rage that once flooded Anakin's mind in uncontrollable surges now answers his command, and the raw force potential that the Jedi tried to contain and the arena tried to exploit finally finds its shape.
The dark side asks nothing of you except honesty. It does not preach compassion while ignoring slavery. It teaches you the strength to act on what you already believe.
Anakin grows stronger, colder, and more precise with each passing week. and the scared boy who pressed his face against cell bars to touch his mother's hand sinks further beneath the surface. During those 2 years, word of Anakin's raids on Jabba's outposts reached Coruscant through refugee channels, and Obi-Wan convinces Padme Amidala to visit Tatooine under humanitarian cover to find him. She tracks him to the settlement where he recovers between training sessions, and Anakin tells her to leave. But she keeps coming back. She brings medical supplies for the freed slaves in the settlement and sits with them while Anakin watches from a distance. She never pushes him. Over months of short visits, he begins tolerating her presence, then accepting it, then noticing the silence she leaves behind when her shuttle lifts off. He doesn't love her yet. He doesn't trust her yet. But something in him has started listening for the sound of her ship on the horizon, and that alone unsettles him more than any enemy he has faced. Anakin returns to Jabba's palace at 21 years old, and this time no army stands between him and the throne room. He walks through the defenses with the red blade humming in his hand, and every guard who steps in his path falls before they can raise a weapon. The palace corridors that haunted his childhood fill with the sound of his footsteps and the screams of Jabba's enforcers dying in the dark. When Anakin reaches the throne room, Jabba panics and offers him credits, territory, ships, anything he wants. Anakin knows what he wants. He drives the lightsaber through the Hutt's bloated body and watches him die on the same dais where he once ordered a 9-year-old boy to fight for his entertainment. Anakin frees every slave in the palace. The gladiators who once trained in the same pits he survived recognize him immediately, their hesitation giving way to reverence. He stands before them with the red saber at his hip, and he looks at their faces. He sees his younger self
These are
reflected
hard.
back at him.
Compassion is not weakness, Anakin. It is the only thing that separates a warrior from a weapon.
He thinks of Qui-Gon entering a slave's quarters on nothing but trust, and of Shmi pressed against cold bars, saying someone would come. Now he chooses to be that for them. He doesn't command them to fight. He tells them the truth, that he was one of them, that he knows what freedom costs, and that he is not asking for obedience, but for resistance against those who took everything from them. Half of them step forward before he even finishes. He organizes them into squads, teaches them tactics, and gives them structure beyond survival. Word spreads through the Outer Rim, and more freed slaves arrive each week. Pit fighters, laborers, and runaways from Hutt operations across multiple systems. Within months, he commands hundreds of fighters. They are poorly equipped and armed with scavenged blasters and improvised armor, but they are disciplined in a way trained armies rarely are. What they lack in resources, they make up for in cohesion, purpose, and a hatred of the slave trade that turns them into something far more dangerous than soldiers. Padme arrives at the palace 3 days after the takeover on her next scheduled humanitarian visit. She walks into the throne room to find Anakin sitting on Jabba's old dais, surrounded by armed freed slaves. The cold authority of his posture makes her stop in the doorway.
Leave.
Anakin, what happened here? What did you do?
I said leave.
No.
Anakin's hand snaps up and the force slams into her chest before he even processes what he's doing. She flies backward off her feet and crashes into the stone doorframe. Her wrist cracks against the wall at the severe angle. She hits the ground and gasps, clutching her arm to her body as the throne room goes dead silent. Anakin is on his feet before the echo fades. The anger drains from his face, and something raw and horrified replaces it because he has been on the receiving end of this exact moment 100 times in the pits, and he swore he would never become the hand that delivers it. He crosses the throne room and at a run and drops to his knees beside her.
Padme, let me see it.
Don't touch me.
Please, let me see.
She holds his gaze for a long moment with pain and anger and something else moving through her expression, and then she extends her wrist. He takes it carefully in both hands and feels the swelling already forming. The sudden gentleness of his fingers is so different from the violence that put her on the ground 3 seconds ago. He wraps her wrist with supplies from the palace stores while she sits against the wall watching him work, and neither of them speaks for a long time. When he finishes, she flexes her fingers and looks up at him.
I'm sorry. That's not what I wanted to do. I don't know what came over me.
Then stop being it. You freed those people, Anakin. I saw the settlements you built. I saw the children. There's something good in you that all of this darkness hasn't killed yet, and I'm not going to walk away from it.
Anakin says nothing, but he doesn't tell her to leave again. She stays at the palace in the weeks that follow, helping organize supply distribution for the freed slave settlements and working alongside people Anakin liberated. She sees the operation he's built, the loyalty he commands, the purpose he had given to people who had none. She does not know.
It's weird how
the
many
figure who trained him. She does not know about the red saber hidden in his quarters or the dark side tech.
different like shades of black are like close together that you would think would all be one color, but they're not.
Snakes running through his veins. She knows the only version of Anakin who freed the slaves and flinched when he hurt her, and that version is enough to keep her there. Weeks after Padme's arrival, Anakin receives a transmission on the encrypted channel he shares with his master. He leaves the palace alone after dark and meets the hooded figure at the canyon outpost miles from the settlement. This time the figure pulls back the hood. Chancellor Palpatine's face stares back at Anakin in the moonlight. Anakin ignites his red saber and crosses the distance in 2 strides. Palpatine stands perfectly still with the blade hovering an inch from his throat.
Everything I told you was true. The Jedi expelled you. The Republic allowed your mother to die in slavery. I came for you when you were bleeding in the desert, and no one else did.
You lied to me.
I withheld my title. I never lied about who I am or what I believe. The Jedi Order and the Republic are the same system that kept your mother in chains. I want to tear that system down. So do you.
What do you want from me?
Palpatine lays out the offer. Military-grade weapons, body armor, assault transports, light cruisers, everything funneled through black market channels that trace nowhere near the Chancellor's office. It's everything Anakin needs to turn his militia into a real army. And when the time comes, that army will go where Palpatine points. The target is the Jedi Temple, the institution that expelled Anakin, the order that sat in meditation chambers while his mother died in a mineshaft. Anakin hates every word of it. He hates that every justification maps onto something he already lived and already felt and already screamed about into empty rooms on forgotten ships in the Outer Rim. He doesn't know. Palpatine smiles. On Coruscant, the Jedi Council spent years chasing a Sith presence that Maul's appearance confirmed, and every lead has gone cold. Yoda senses growing darkness in the Outer Rim, and Obi-Wan suspects the source connects to his lost apprentice, but he cannot prove it while the Clone Wars stretch the Order across 1,000 battlefields. Padme stays on Tatooine. Her diplomatic visits quietly become permanent as the Senate stops asking when she'll return. She works beside freed slaves and watches children play where holding pens once stood. She sees Anakin guarding them with relentless vigilance and realizes that beneath the scars, he still cares about the people she fights for. He lets her in a little at a time. They eat together most evenings. He speaks of the pits and fragments, of Shmi and even smaller ones, of each confession clearly costing him. One night, on the palace roof, Anakin sits quiet for a long time before he speaks.
Can I trust you with something important?
Yes, Anakin. You never have to ask that.
I know who Sidious is, Padme.
What? Who is he?
Palpatine.
What? How do you know that?
Anakin tells her about bleeding out in the desert, about the hooded figure who walked into the hut and closed his wounds, about the months of training, the combat forms, the focus, power, and purpose the figure gave him when the Jedi had thrown him away. He tells her that Palpatine controls both sides of the war and plans to tear the whole system down, and that he intends to arm the militia with real weapons when the time comes.
Anakin, he's not a good person. Everything he did for you was calculated. He let you suffer so he could be the one who saved you.
He showed up. That is more than the Council ever did. More than the Order ever did. They expelled me and forgot I existed.
That does not make him your ally. He is a Sith Lord. He started this war. Millions of people are dead because of him.
I'm telling you this because I want you with me when it happens. Leave the Senate. Stay here.
Padme sees the anger building in him and knows this is not the moment to push further. She goes quiet and nods and says nothing more that night. The next morning, she sends an encrypted transmission to Obi-Wan Kenobi. Obi-Wan receives the transmission in his quarters at the Jedi Temple and brings it directly to the Council. Palpatine is the Sith Lord. The room falls silent. Mace assembles a strike team within the hour, while Bail Organa and Mon Mothma receive discreet briefings to provide political cover for the arrest. Mace orders Obi-Wan to join the operation, but he refuses. He insists the Chancellor is no longer the greatest threat. Anakin is. If Palpatine has already turned him, someone has to reach him before it's too late. With Mace's reluctant approval, Obi-Wan departs for Tatooine. Palpatine contacts Anakin through the secure channel and tells him the Jedi know. He felt the Council's intent ripple through the Force the moment Mace began assembling the strike team. Only one person outside the two of them knew the truth. Anakin goes still. His hands tighten on the comm unit until the casing cracks. He finds Padme's diplomatic shuttle on the palace landing platform with engines warming for departure. She sees him coming across the sand, and she knows from his face exactly what happened.
You told them.
I had to. He will destroy everything, Anakin. The Republic, the galaxy, you.
You were the only person I ever trusted completely. The only one I told the truth because I believed you earned it.
I did it because I love you.
Jabba's enforcers used to say they punished us out of love, too.
Come with me. Testify against him. The Senate will listen to you. You can end this the right way.
She reaches for his arm and he pulls away. Anakin stares at her and his hand rests on the hilt of his red saber, and for a long moment the desert wind is the only sound between them. His fingers tremble on the hilt. He drops his hand from the hilt and walks away across the sand without another word. Padme watches him disappear into the palace and climbs aboard her shuttle, and the engines carry her into the sky, while below her the man she loves chooses a path she cannot follow. Palpatine's follow-up transmission arrives within minutes. The time is now. Mace's strike team heads for the Chancellor's office. The Jedi Temple stands undermanned, with most of the Jedi deployed to battlefronts across the galaxy. Anakin mobilizes his gladiator army. Transport ships loaded with former slaves carrying military-grade weapons lift off from Tatooine and jump to hyperspace. Hundreds of freed pit fighters and chain workers and runaways fill the holds, and Anakin tells them exactly what he believes. The Jedi held enough power to end slavery across the galaxy and chose their comfort instead. Most of them believe it because most of them lived it. Palpatine creates a military emergency in a neighboring system that draws Coruscant's defense fleet from the capital and routes Anakin's army through civilian traffic lanes that bypass every checkpoint. The transports slip through and enter Coruscant's atmosphere unopposed. Mace Windu leads Kit Fisto, Ajen Kalar, and CC-Teen into the Chancellor's office and finds Palpatine waiting with yellow eyes and Sith robes beneath the Chancellor's cloak. Fisto, Kalar, and Teen fall within seconds. The possible speed of Palpatine's blade. Mace engages alone, and his Vapad draws on the darkness pouring off the Sith Lord, channeling it back through every strike. The duel tears the office apart as Mace drives Palpatine backward across the ruined room. As Anakin arrives at the temple, he finds that Palpatine has already used his access codes to disable the primary security systems from within. Transports land on the temple steps, and gladiators pour through the main entrance carrying military-grade blasters, vibroblades, and the fury of a lifetime in chains. Anakin leads from the front with his red lightsaber cutting through the remaining Jedi. Temple guards fall. Knights fall. The halls where Anakin once walked under monitoring protocols and tracking crystals burn across him, and the people at his back believe they are tearing down the institution that allowed their suffering. Then, through the Force, he feels it. Palpatine's presence contracting, desperate and cornered. Somewhere across the city, he hands command to his lieutenant and moves towards the Chancellor's office. In the ruined office, Palpatine desperately fights back as Mace advances. With one final strike, Mace disarms him and pins him against the shattered viewport. Palpatine drops to his knees with his scarred face twisted and his hands raised. Mace lifts his blade for the killing stroke. Just as he's about to drive his blade through Palpatine's chest, Anakin appears in the doorway. His robes carry scorch marks from the temple assault. The red blade hums in his hand, and his eyes burn solid yellow in the dim light. Mace turns and sees the boy he voted to expel standing 10 feet away, ash masking his face.
Skywalker.
Hello, Master Windu.
What have you become?
What you and the Order made me.
You did this. The temple is burning because of you.
The temple expelled me. I merely returned the favor.
Mace raises his blade, and Anakin meets him in the center of the room. Purple clashes against red, and the force of the contact shatters the glass in the viewport behind them. Mace drives forward with Vapad, and Anakin absorbs the strike with a ferocity that comes from somewhere older and darker than any Sith training. They lock blades and press against each other with the force bending the air between them.
I was protecting the Order from what you would become. Look at yourself. I was right.
You were afraid. You were afraid of me. And you punished a child for it.
Behind them, Palpatine pulls himself off the floor with both fighters focused on each other. He steadies his breathing and gathers the dark side into his hands as the duel rages across the office. Mace breaks the saber lock and drives Anakin back 3 steps with a sweeping combination, and for a moment the Jedi Master's skill threatens to overwhelm the younger fighter. Anakin staggers, and Mace raises his blade for a decisive strike. Palpatine unleashes a torrent of force lightning into Mace's exposed back. The blast of energy tears through his body and lifts him off his feet, carrying him through the shattered viewport and out into the Coruscant night. Mace Windu falls without a sound. The comlink on Anakin's belt crackles. A lieutenant reports that Obi-Wan Kenobi has arrived on Tatooine and is waiting at the palace. Anakin goes still. Of everyone left alive who might have come for him, Obi-Wan is the only one who would come alone.
The Senate must be addressed tonight. Your presence beside me sends a message that cannot be delayed.
You have waited long enough for this moment. You can wait one more night.
Kenobi is not coming to reconcile with you, Anakin. He is coming to stop what we have built.
Then I will stop him. That is what you want anyway.
Palpatine studies him for a long moment, and then he steps aside. He knows better than to cage this particular animal twice in one night. Anakin walks out without looking back. Palpatine turns to the shattered viewport and looks out over a Coruscant that is already his, smoke rising from the temple district against the city lights. He straightens his robes and finds a transmission channel to the Senate floor. By the time Anakin's ship clears the atmosphere, Palpatine is already speaking. The Jedi attempted to assassinate the Chancellor. A terrorist army struck the temple in retaliation for years of Jedi overreach. The Republic, he tells them with sorrow carved into every word, has failed. With his hands clasped and his voice steady, he declares the Galactic Empire and executes Order 66. The Senate, terrified, leaderless, and desperate for someone to tell them the storm has passed, accepts. On Tatooine, Anakin's transport touches down on the palace landing platform. He walks through the corridors toward the throne room, where his people hold Obi-Wan under guard. The freed fighters step aside as Anakin enters, and he waves them out of the room with a single gesture. The door closes. The two men who were once master and student stand 20 feet apart in the torchlit chamber, and years of failure, grief, and anger fill the distance between them.
Anakin, hello. Look at you. Where were you? Your soldiers said you left the planet. Where did you go?
State your business, Obi-Wan.
I came because Padme told us the truth about Palpatine. The Council sent a strike team to arrest him. I came here instead because I needed to reach you before it was too late.
It's already too late. You want to know where I was? Coruscant.
Coruscant? Why would you... Anakin, what did you do?
I led my army to the Jedi Temple, and we burned it to the ground. My soldiers killed the knights you left behind when you scattered your order across the galaxy. And Mace Windu is dead because I held him in place long enough for Palpatine to throw him through a window.
No. Tell me you're lying.
The Republic is gone. The Council is gone. The Jedi are gone. I helped bring an end to all of it.
Why? Anakin, why?
Why? Because the Jedi created this. You expelled me. You ignored slavery. You treated me as a threat from the day I walked through your doors.
I tried to save you. I fought for you in every council session. I visited you every day until your disappearance. I sent Padme to find you because I never stopped looking.
Trying was never enough, Obi-Wan.
Then I will do what I must.
You will try.
They ignite their sabers. Blue meets red in the torchlight. The duel carries them through the palace corridors, through the arena where Anakin fought as a child, through the cells where Shmi once slept behind iron bars. He presses forward with the dark side fueling every swing, and the arena.
This is a good story, though.
Obi-Wan gives ground until his back hits the wall of the gladiator pit. Anakin drives the red blade through Obi-Wan's guard and into his chest. Obi-Wan slides down the wall and lands in the sand where hundreds of slaves fought and died for Jabba's entertainment. Anakin stands over his body and waits for the guilt, the pain, the remorse that should follow killing the closest thing he ever had to a brother. He waits for it to hit him the way true Veld's death had hit him in the temple healing ward all those years ago. It doesn't come. The pits trained it out of him a long time ago. Palpatine's empire consolidates across the galaxy. Clone troopers execute the Jedi in thousands of worlds, and Anakin's gladiator army holds the Outer Rim territories as the Empire's fist. The freed slaves he liberated become enforcers of a new regime, and the shift from liberators to occupiers happens so gradually that most of them do not notice until the chains they broke are replaced by chains they forged themselves. Yoda escapes Kashyyyk and disappears. A handful of surviving Jedi scatter into hiding across the galaxy's forgotten corners. Padme stays alive, fleeing to Naboo with Bail Organa's help. On Tatooine, atop the palace, Anakin looks out over the desert under the sunset descent of the twin suns. The same suns his mother watched every day of her captivity. The same suns he watched through the arena grates as a child when he dreamed about freedom. He sits down on the roof of the palace that he has conquered. He owns this palace now. He commands the territory. No chains bind his wrists. No bars hold him. No master controls where he walks. He sits until the suns sink into the horizon, until the final warmth and light of the day fades and the desert chill begins to sink into his bones. Sand stretches in every direction, empty and vast, into never-ending darkness. Somewhere beneath the sand, his mother lies in a grave no one marked. Somewhere behind him, Obi-Wan's body cools in the arena. Somewhere across the galaxy, a woman he almost loved sits on Naboo beneath the gentler skies. All Anakin Skywalker wanted was freedom, and all it cost him was everything. That's our theory. Star Wars is a galaxy filled with exciting stories and possibilities, and we love exploring.
That was dark.
If you'd like to join us on this journey to a galaxy far, far away, then please like, share.
SpaceX just did something unusual with Ship 40, a Starship static fire where 5 of the 6 engines stayed completely silent. That one detail tells us something important about Flight 13. Meanwhile, a second ship is already at the test site. Those mysterious white heat tiles are back, and SpaceX is about to set a Starship record no rocket has ever held. My name is Felix, welcome to What About It, let's dive right in. Starship updates. Let's start with Ship 40 and a rather important correction from the last episode, because what happened at Massey's on June 25th was not what anyone expected. At first, it looked like a completely normal static fire setup. A regular 6-engine test, the kind Ship 39 did before Flight 12. That's what I expected and what I predicted. But then something changed. SpaceX began fueling the vehicle. Then they stopped the fueling process with the oxygen tank only about 2/3 full and only a tiny amount of methane was loaded. That's not how you set up a full 6-engine static fire. Then SpaceX fired a single engine. One of the center sea level Raptors, engine number 142, for about 15 seconds. Every other engine stayed completely silent. And SpaceX released a genuinely beautiful video of the test filmed from the inside of the engine skirt. The burn itself looked clean and healthy, but it was just that one engine. Alongside the video, SpaceX stated that a full-duration single-engine test was performed. That is not the norm. Look at how Ship 39 did it. It rolled to Massey's, went through a spin prime and tanking runs, and then performed a full-duration static fire on April 14th. All 6 engines. Then it went to the launch site on May 8th. No single engine test anywhere in that sequence. So why did Ship 40 only fire one engine? Here's my theory. I think SpaceX was setting up for a normal 6-engine static fire, and something went wrong during the lead-up. Some issue appeared during fueling or pre-test checkouts. Rather than scrub entirely, they might have repurposed the attempt into a single-engine test to gather what data they could from that one engine. And then they stopped and rolled Ship 40 back to Mega Bay 2 on June 26th. So if that is correct, it tells us something useful. The problem, if there was one, was not likely related to the engines or the ship-side systems that feed them, not the airframe or the tanks. If it were a tank or structural issue, you wouldn't have fired any engine at all. The fact that engine 142 fired cleanly says the core vehicle is healthy. The issue is narrower than that. So I expect SpaceX to roll Ship 40 back out to Massey's very soon to complete a proper full 6-engine static fire, exactly the way Ship 39 did. By the time you're watching this, that rollout may already have happened or is about to. Fingers crossed the ship side of Flight 13 isn't done quite yet, but it is close. And here's why I'm not worried about the Ship 40 situation slowing things down. Because while Ship 40 was rolling back, Ship 41 was rolling out. On June 28th, Ship 41 made its way to Massey's to begin its own cryo-test campaign. The plan is very likely an ambient pressure test first, then a cryogenic test run right after. The typical procedure. This first cryo test matters more than people realize for a brand new vehicle. It's the initial validation of the tank structure. Before you ever put combustible propellant in a ship, you fill it with inert cryogenic liquid and pressurize it to confirm the tanks are well built, properly welded, and free of defects. It's the structural proof test. You don't move forward until the vehicle passes it. And yeah, we are spoiled. Don't be fooled. The cadence is nuts. Version 3 Starship is still very new territory. Flight 12 was the first flight of any Version 3 hardware just weeks ago. And yet, here we are, watching 2 Version 3 ships move through their test campaigns at the same time. Ship 40 wrapping up, Ship 41 just starting. This parallel processing is exactly the operational tempo SpaceX has been building toward. This new generation of vehicles is designed to collect as much data as possible in as little time as possible. Let me put some numbers on it. Ship 40 went from the start of its cryotest on May 3rd to static fire testing on June 24th. That's 52 days, a little under 2 months. Now apply that to Ship 41. It rolled out for cryo on June 28th. Add the same 52 days and you land on August 19th for Ship 41, hopefully being test complete and flight ready. From that, we can extrapolate numbers, and I love doing that. If Flight 13 launches in the middle of July, which is my current estimate, then a flight-ready Ship 41 around August 19th puts Flight 14 toward the end of August. And Flight 14 is the one that could include the first ship catch, if everything goes well on Flight 13. There is your possible Flight 14 launch date before Flight 13 has even taken place. But wait, there's more. Let's extrapolate. Flight 12 launched May 22nd. If Flight 13 is mid-July and Flight 14 is end of August,
About 2/3 up.
SpaceX will have flown 3 Starship missions in just over 3 months. If we say Flight 14 goes on August 31st, that is 101 days for 3 flights. And these test campaigns are only going to get faster from here. That's the monthly cadence Shotwell was talking about taking shape right there. We spend a lot of time on this channel marveling at what machines can do once someone actually learns to fly them. And right now, the machine everyone fumbling with is AI. Today's sponsor Outskill wants to fix the fumbling. So here's the pattern. Someone opens up a model like Claude, stares at all the options, freezes, and never finds out what it can really do. Most people treat it like a slightly smarter Google. Outskill is built to fix exactly that. Outskill's running a free Claude-focused 2-day workshop this weekend, 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. Eastern. You'll see how Claude is used to build apps, design presentations, and automate whole workflows. All without writing a single line of code. You'll do deep research, build your own artifacts and dashboards, wire up connectors, and spin up your own agents. You'll also get a prompt Bible, Claude Code secrets, and a personalized AI toolkit builder. Grab your free seat to the 2-day AI Mastermind, find the link below or scan the QR code on your screen. 100% discount for the first 1,000 people. Dive deep into AI and learn automations, build AI agents, make videos, images, all for free. Bonuses worth $5,100 plus if you join and attend. Try it right now and...
Anthropic says that the US government has lifted restrictions on foreign access to its Fable 5 AI model after the Trump administration's safety concerns were resolved. Let's get more now with Neil Campling, Bloomberg's senior strategist. Morning, Neil. So where does this leave Anthropic's relationship with the Trump administration? And what did Anthropic actually do to get these export controls lifted?
Yeah, so it's good news in that they are able now to allow this for use for customers. I think what we basically said is that there's extra cybersecurity safeguards in place now, which will get over the national security concerns that the government previously had. So they put in a new safeguard to make sure that Fable targets and blocks behavior that had allowed some users to bypass the securities before. So it's definitely good news that they're lifting the restrictions. And it also means that now we have an ability to really keep pace with China's AI development, because we've heard just in recent days that some of the Chinese AI models have been catching up with some of the US frontier models. So this should certainly enable Anthropic to continue its leadership that it has in the AI frontier space. So it's definitely good news for the tech industry and for coders.
Well, speaking of which, Anthropic's also releasing new software for scientists, Neil. How much of that is going to tread on the toes of drug discovery companies?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's certainly, I mean, it could be used to help the drug discovery companies accelerate time to market by being able to look through so many databases at once. The biggest kind of potential competitive threat actually comes to Google's DeepMind. It's been at the vanguard of AI for science for the last 10 years. And all of a sudden, overnight, DeepMind has gone from the leader and the most advanced model in this space to actually now playing catch up for the science industry. So this could be something that actually accelerates time to market for new drugs, and is certainly yet another example of Anthropic leading the charge for these new agentic AI models being applied to specific needs that we have in industries.
Interesting to see the likes of Schrodinger falling on the back of the news about Claude Science. Neil, thank you so much for that. That's Bloomberg's Neil Campling.
What is this one? What if the Force revived Plo Koon and sent him back to episode 1? How long? 32? Let's do it. I'm down for another story. Plo Koon is pretty cool.
What if the Force revived Plo Koon and sent him back to episode 1? Let's explore the depths of it in the video. If you enjoyed deep dives into Harry Potter or Game of Thrones, check out our sister channels, Half-Blood Theorist and the Three-Eyed Theorist. Links are in the description. Master Plo wakes with a start, his body shaking as his eyes flash open. He is sitting in the Jedi Council chambers and nearly falls out of his seat. He hears gasps from around the room. He barely catches himself and takes a look around. When he does, Plo wonders whether he has actually hit his head because he sees the rest of the Jedi Council standing before him. His old friends from a past life, not just those he saw in the waning days of the Clone Wars, but also those who had died along the way. Even Peel, Yariel Poof, and Adi Gallia. The sight of them causes him to shudder once again as a rush of emotions courses through him. He only had a vague idea of what happened during his death, just that his wingmen turned their cannons on him at Cato Nemoidia. He had no clue why, but in those last moments before the fires consumed him, he felt a surge of agony, not from the pain of the attack, but from a scream in the Force, as if thousands of lives were snuffed out simultaneously.
Master Plo, are you all right?
Oh, yes. Apologies, Master Yoda. I felt lightheaded for a moment.
In need of a break, are you? Or something on your mind, there is?
Nothing that can't wait.
He says the words casually enough, but when their eyes meet, his old friend knows him well enough to sense the tone in his voice. There is not just something passing through his mind, there is something else that is bothering him. However, for the time being, slide as they continue their meeting. Clearing his throat, Yoda continues the agenda as normal. The Jedi Council has gathered today to speak of the latest developments of the Naboo crisis and how the blockade is getting worse. The Trade Federation has even gotten bold enough to try to attack two of their Jedi, Obi-Wan Kenobi and Qui-Gon Jinn. This time, Master Plo is grateful for his mask and goggles as they hide the surprise on his face. If seeing his friends still alive was surprising, then hearing that name was truly breathtaking. More importantly, it provides him with information about just where he is, the Naboo crisis. That means that this is when they find Skywalker, and when Dooku leaves the Jedi Order. Master Plo says nothing for the remainder of the meeting, simply stewing with those thoughts, trying to piece together what he knows will happen, and the information he carries that none of them might know. Eventually, when the meeting comes to an end, the rest of the Jedi Council files out, all except for Yoda, who remains seated and seems in deep thought with his eyes shut. Taking a moment to clear his throat, Plo approaches him.
Master Yoda, there is something I must tell you.
Troubled you are. Sense the turmoil within you, my old friend.
It is because I should be dead right now.
What do you mean?
Master Plo sits down because he doesn't trust his legs to keep him upright as he explains everything. He starts with the Naboo crisis and how everything ends with Qui-Gon's death and Obi-Wan taking an apprentice, a boy they find who is the chosen one. Afterward, Dooku and Sifo-Dyas, how they both secretly begin creating an army in secret and sowing the seeds for galactic war, all at the behest of a Sith Lord in the Senate. And then his voice catches as he explains the horrors of the Clone Wars, but also the sudden spike in the Force he felt as the dark side gains influence. Finally, he speaks of his death, killed by his own men.
Master Plo, grave are these accusations. Cannot do anything I can, without evidence. Know the Sith Lord's identity, do you?
No, it was not my task to figure that out. But if you doubt me, then keep watching for the events that will unfold. Qui-Gon will return, and he shall bring a boy with him. A boy who shall be the chosen one.
Very well. Trust you I do. Keep watch over Sifo-Dyas and Count Dooku. I shall. But find the evidence of this conspiracy. You must.
The first signs of things to come arrive when Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon return. The pair arrive with the Queen of Naboo in tow, but that isn't all they bring with them. The pair also bring another stray they picked up, a boy of 9 by the name of Anakin Skywalker. While the rest of the Jedi greet this with confusion, Master Yoda's eyes widen, and he grips his cane tightly, recalling Master Plo's warning. He bites back the shock and introduces himself, handling the deliberations regarding the boy while his friend continues his investigation. And he starts with the two Jedi Masters he warned Yoda about. Plo watches the two in the coming days. They have long since had a reputation for having controversial opinions outside the Jedi's orthodoxy, so it is no surprise that they gravitate toward one another. What raises eyebrows is just how often they are seen. They do not just meditate or spar, they also spend hours in the archives talking, visiting the other chambers to speak, and walking through the halls. It is also concerning just how they go about this. They do not just talk to each other, but seem actively wary of others. They sit in shrouded corners where they can keep an eye on the others, but no one can find them. Their visits are done at hours when no one is around or will come looking. All of it just confirms what he already suspects, and it provides the perfect opportunity to act. While they are conducting one of their usual meetings, Master Plo takes this chance to sneak into Sifo-Dyas' chambers. He searches through his things for any evidence he can. When he begins working through the Jedi Master's datapad, he starts to notice the documents he's downloaded about Kamino, not just of the planet itself, but of the Kaminoans and their cloning business. These include estimates for how much an order would cost and possibly genetic materials they could use. He already has footage of how often they had lingered around the section of the archives where Kamino was located. All of this is rather damning proof. He shoves the datapad in his tunic and hurries out. However, Plo only gets a few steps when a voice snaps him back into place.
I'm afraid that is information for my personal use only, my friend. I kindly ask that you put my things back where you found them.
Plo turns to see Sifo-Dyas standing at the end of the hall. He is alone, but his hands grip his lightsaber. There's a long, mournful look on his face, even and a sad look in his eyes, as if silently pleading for him to cooperate. When Plo reaches for his own lightsaber, his fellow Jedi ignites his, but it does not escape his notice that his hands are shaking.
I am sure that this was all just a mistake, my friend. So let us both forget what we saw and go our separate ways. I would not want you to get hurt, Master Plo.
There are no mistakes. You are attempting to circumvent the authority of the Republic and the Jedi with your actions. I cannot allow that.
I am. But all in service of the Force.
This path does not end well for you.
It is a difficult path, but only because the Jedi have made it so.
I do not deny that.
So why are you standing in my way?
Because I cannot allow you to make this mistake. I know where this path leads.
You know nothing. I have seen what happens, Master. I have had visions from the Force of what happens if we don't act. The Jedi have become stagnant, and our enemies have grown stronger because of it. This army will ensure that we are prepared for what happens next.
This army will become a tool of oppression and will be used to kill the Jedi.
No, that cannot be. I have seen the future. The visions told me that the Sith will take over. They will steal the Republic.
That is not what I saw.
And slowly he begins to explain everything. He does not speak of the Jedi's death, for he knows that will not change anything. Instead, he speaks of the war that follows from Dooku's meddling, and how he is secretly cooperating with the Sith, how the galaxy finds itself embroiled in a galactic war. As the Jedi Master hears this, he drops to his knees and shakes his head. Tears stream down his face as he realizes what he's done. Gently, he falls to his feet and places his arm around his shoulders. He comforts his friend until he manages to calm down, and then slowly asks about the clone army. Unfortunately, the order for 200,000 units has already been sent out, payments have been sent, and production is already beginning. However, Plo assures him that they still have a chance to stop things. They have evidence, and this is all presented to the Jedi Council. At last, Yoda is free to act and orders the arrest of Dooku. The temple rushes out to find him, but when they break into his chambers, they find them empty. The Jedi has long fled, having sensed the disturbance in the Force and escaped to the unknown regions. A hunt is conducted, but the Jedi turns their attention to more pressing matters. The crisis on Naboo. Aside from Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, 3 more Jedi accompany them, and Anakin is accepted as a youngling. Master Plo continues his investigation with Sifo-Dyas as Qui-Gon resolves this blockade. A few weeks later, he returns, having forced Darth Maul to retreat and capture Nute Gunray. When they do, the next phase of their plan begins. By now, there is no denying Master Plo's visions, and the Jedi Council gives its full support. The issue remains that they have no idea who Sidious is. To call for an investigation in the Senate will only spook him, so they have to flush him out. To that end, they turn to Kamino. With production now underway, the next best thing they can do is take control of the situation. Plo and Sifo-Dyas head to Kamino to get the drop on the issue and ensure that Dooku cannot use the clone army. They arrive at the facility, where they are welcomed by Lama Su. There, the Jedi explains their situation. Although Dooku and Sifo-Dyas originally promised a follow-up order, they are shelving that plan due to budget constraints and wanting to determine the efficiency of the clones first. They also make it clear that Sifo-Dyas and Plo are the true representatives of the Jedi Order, and anyone else does not speak for them. This all but locks Dooku out from meddling any further. However, he is not fully out of options, as while he can't touch the clone army, he does manage to warn Palpatine about all of this and how Sifo-Dyas can no longer be relied upon and how they are taking control of the clones. He expects anger from his master, but instead, Palpatine simply smiles.
A minor setback, but one that has the potential to open many possibilities for us, my friend. The Jedi can keep the army, but they will also bear all the responsibilities.
Although Dooku cannot get involved, he still has access to their information and sends the evidence to Palpatine's allies, who alter the information. One day, as the Senator of Naboo, he humbly requests the floor and puts it all forward.
I come to you all today to bring forth troubling news. It has come to my attention that the Jedi are now attempting to commission a military without any authorization by the Senate. They do this in response to the recent Naboo crisis and the emergency of Darth Maul. While I acknowledge the seriousness of this being, I must also emphasize that these actions are highly illegal and call the Senate to action.
The response is what they expect. His allies are joined by corrupt senators who argue the Jedi are overstepping and must be brought to heel. Those with a grudge or who have opposed the order eagerly join the accusations of corruption and sedition. Palpatine is more moderate. He makes no such claims and instead simply urges the Senate to take action in order to prevent them from destabilizing the galaxy with this. Harsher measures are called, observers are sent to the Jedi, and accountability is demanded. And as this happens, Dooku is hailed as a hero for bringing these issues to light. Rather than being seen as a deserter who left the Jedi Order, the story becomes that he was the one who served as a whistleblower to this whole affair. And the narrative soon forms that the Jedi are growing paranoid with the emergence of a single Sith warrior and are now keen on opposing them. They believe that stricter military action is necessary, something that flies in the face of the Ruusan Reformation. All of this coalesces into the Jedi Oversight Act, which calls for further Senate oversight in the Order's activities. They must now agree before any Jedi is deployed on missions, and intelligence operations must be reported within a month. The Jedi tries to speak their own story, saying that someone was manipulating them. It was Dooku who wanted to create this army, but that story falls flat when reports surface that Sifo-Dyas was the one who placed the order. And when the Jedi Master personally testifies, they do not find a dignified Jedi Master. Instead, they find a paranoid, worried man. The simple truth is that despite Master Plo and the Jedi's assurances, it does not fully remove the doubts in his mind. These continue to fester. In fact, it amplifies, as if he has no idea what is true and struggles to make sense of it. He answers what he knows, but also mutters of force visions and dangers off in the horizon. All of these fears are secretly amplified by Palpatine each time he is there. The senators are then greeted by a Jedi whose eyes dance with madness and whose speech tinges with paranoia. Other Jedi try to take over, offering more level-headed assessments of what is going on, pointing to their reduced orders and how the Jedi were self-policing. But the Senate does not remember them. They remember the crazed Sifo-Dyas, and it hurts their case. It gets so bad that Palpatine is able to launch a successful coup against Chancellor Valorum and secure the office for himself. His first act is to pass the new Jedi Oversight Act, which legalizes everything that the Senate was proposing. All of this puts the Jedi in a difficult position, as they must now face an unfriendly Senate. They continue to hold on to their stance that they are not trying to organize an army, but are reluctantly forced to accept observers in Kamino to allow them to monitor the continued development of the clone army. The one consolation is that it makes it abundantly clear that Palpatine is the most likely suspect for a Sith Lord, or at least one of his allies. However, his position as Chancellor makes him virtually unassailable. What is worse is that it also leaves Dooku in a stronger position, as he has now become a hero in the eyes of the Republic. For the next few years, the Jedi remain in a precarious balancing act. They can still maintain their normal position, but must tread carefully or risk angering the Senate, who are looking for a position to pounce. All this leaves Dooku free to sow the seeds of unrest in the galaxy and begin creating the CIS.
Give me 1 second.
Sawdust, 2 for the stain, 3 for the brush and the bread through the grain, 4 for the resin, clear as rain. Count it out, say it again. 1 for the sawdust, 2 for the stain, 3 for the brush and the bread through the grain, 4 for the resin, clear as rain. Say it loud, shine. Let the scars hold gold in the evening light. I was made from the shavings and the settled dust, and the work in my hands was the work of us. One for the sawdust, two for the stain, three for the brush and the breath through the grain, four for the resin, clear as rain. Count it out, say it again. One for the sawdust, two for the stain, three for the brush and the breath through the grain, four for the resin, clear as rain. Say it loud, say it proud, say it again. Tap it down, let it hold, let it stay. Brush by brush, we paint the day. Tap it down, let it hold, let it stay. Count it out, say it again.
I'm back. Sorry, needed to use the restroom, like, urgently, all of a sudden.
While that is happening, Palpatine continues to target Sifo-Dyas, sensing his mental instability and deciding to take advantage of that. He starts with the nightmares. Although Sifo-Dyas tries to tell himself that the earlier visions he encountered were false, the dreams try to tell him otherwise. They show him images of the Jedi Temple burning, of the Republic being dominated by chaos. It flashes him images of the dark side organizations across the galaxy, the Night Sisters, Force cults, criminal gangs, things which Palpatine has seen through his lifetime and now show to him. To a mind as already fraught and confused as his, these images only leave the uncertainty to grow within him. Master Plo visits him and helps him as best he can. The two of them sit together and meditate. He repeatedly assures the Jedi that they are on the right path and that they must stay the course and work it through.
You are conflicted, my friend. I can sense your doubts.
Wouldn't you be doubtful in my situation? After everything that's happened, years of work were wasted serving the same cause I hope to destroy.
It is difficult, I understand. But in the end, you came to your senses and tried to fix that. You are fixing it now. It counts for something. And it tells me that you are being too hard on yourself. What you did was immensely courageous.
And what has that amounted to? We are still in the same place. The Sith are still out there, still gaining power and looking to challenge us. And this leaves me questioning whether anything can be trusted. How do I know that I am following the right path and not just going down the same road again?
The answers you seek are ones that cannot be easily found. They are the ones that no one can tell you. All I can say is that you must trust your judgment.
That doesn't provide much help for the haggard Jedi Master, and the rest of the Jedi Council proves equally ineffective. As far as they're concerned, the only mistake Sifo-Dyas made was straying from their code. If he's truly questioning himself, he should simply stick to what has already been taught to him. Plo watches all of this, and for the first time he begins to seriously question the Jedi Council. Sifo-Dyas has just survived a traumatic experience, something that has completely shattered his worldview, and their first instinct is to force him back into the fold. He thinks of Anakin, not the boy who now trains in the courtyard with the other Jedi, but the young man who caused the Jedi Council more than a few headaches. But he always had his reasons and tried to do what was right. Now more than ever he begins to see his point of view and why he distrusted the Jedi Council so much. Qui-Gon seems to mirror these thoughts as he mutters that Sifo-Dyas needs to learn to trust his own instincts, not having one set of shackles replaced by another. But until that is resolved, Palpatine has his opening to corrupt the Jedi Master. As he heads to bed after another day of ineffectual trying to grapple with his thoughts, Sifo-Dyas closes his eyes and drifts off. Almost at once, he is greeted by the sight of a figure standing before him. Not just any figure, but the elusive Sith Lord they had been hunting. Although he cannot see his face, the strange aura surrounding him makes it clear he is strong in the Force. Sifo-Dyas ignites his lightsaber and orders him to halt, but the figure continues to walk down the hall, walking through the halls until he snarls and swings his lightsaber. It passes through the Sith and disappears in a puff of smoke. His cloak falls to the ground, but the smoke does not dissipate. Instead, it turns into a tendril and materializes behind him. Before Sifo-Dyas can comprehend, he feels a burst of lightning strike him hard in the back. He cries out and falls to the ground as the figure looms over him. Sifo-Dyas raises his lightsaber and manages to block the second barrage. He can feel his arms screaming in protest and threatening to go numb. Meanwhile, the hooded figure does not seem to have any issue and continues to press forward. He advances on the Jedi, his hands closing against his lightsaber and forcing Sifo-Dyas to focus on it. This leaves him unable to stop the second hand from coming up against his forehead. At the last second, his eyes jerk up, but it is too late as it touches him, and Sifo-Dyas' body immediately goes numb. His lightsaber falls from his hand, but the lightning ceases. It is little consolation as Palpatine immediately gets to work. 1,000 thoughts flood through the Jedi's mind at once. He thrashes and tries to move, but his mind holds him back, weighing him down with his doubts. Why should he fight? What good is it even at this point? Is he even strong enough to be able to fight him back? As those thoughts run through his mind, his Force essence begins to leave his body, pulling into the Sith Lord's hands, which he gathers into an orb. It lasts a few moments before the pressure ceases and Sifo-Dyas drops to the ground. It isn't enough to kill him. No, that would be too easy. There are better ways to make use of a Jedi like him.
You have my thanks, Master Jedi. Now you may rest.
The first attack happens not long after. A youngling returning from the training spots, a figure drifting down the corridor, its feet never quite touching the ground. Master Sifo-Dyas. Except his eyes are wrong. They are hollow and pale, and with a flick of his hand, he sends her flying across the hall. By the time the other masters arrive, the figure has drifted deeper into the temple. Passing through clouds of mist, it leaves a trail of cold behind it. 2 knights pursue it into the lower levels and are taken out. They are found later, their faces bloody and slumped against the wall. When they wake up, they speak of strange terrors from that figure. A temple-wide pursuit is organized as every room and chamber is methodically searched for any signs of him. However, these come out empty as they cannot even find any signs of him. Every time they do, he emerges from the most unexpected places and disappears before anyone can catch him, but not before leaving his victims injured, some of them critically. Within a week, accounts of the Phantom have surfaced in the Senate feeds, not with any particular accuracy. The details are smeared and sensationalized, but fit the hollow footage they see. The Jedi Master, the very one who commissioned an illegal clone army and then testified before the Senate in a state of evident mental collapse. Witnesses speak of hollow eyes, of cold corridors, of knights left catatonic in his wake. Masamada is the first to raise the issue formally. He does not accuse, he simply expresses concern, and he suggests that Sifo-Dyas is in no condition to serve as their representative. He proposes that the Senate appoint its own representative in Sifo-Dyas' place, Dooku, who has emerged as Count of Sereno.
I share the Senate's concern for Master Sifo-Dyas' well-being. This is not a matter of punishment. It is a matter of care and responsibility. The Jedi Order has carried a great burden. Let us allow them to focus on their troubled friend, while the Senate ensures continuity in Kamino. Surely that is the compassionate course.
When the vote is called, it passes with immense support. While the Jedi seem prepared to accept this, Master Plo does not intend to go down easily. He joins Qui-Gon in searching for answers. They do not go where Master Sifo-Dyas will appear, but where he went. The cold sometimes lingers, and they can still smell the smoke. This does not stop them. If anything, it only further commits their actions as the pair take their seat and meditate. They feel the strange, almost unnatural elements in this place and take it all in. Rather than try to banish it, they instead commune with it, trying to figure out where it might have come from. Suddenly, Plo twitches as he feels a rush of energy, and then a vision flashes through his mind of a warehouse in the lower districts. It is not far, but just beyond the Jedi's search perimeter. But before they can go there, they feel the cold snap starting to return, and the two of them ignite their lightsabers. The pair follows the trail, which takes them to the archives. Plo hurries to secure the entrance while Qui-Gon moves deeper inside, moving through the shelves, letting only the lightsaber illuminate him. As he does, a creeping stillness and leaves the hairs in the back of his neck standing up. He turns around just as the Phantom drifts around the corner and approaches him. Sifo-Dyas' face is slack and luminescent in the dark, but his hands reach out and pull out his lightsaber. Obi-Wan readies himself and then rushes forward, an otherworldly roar from his mouth. The Jedi Master turns and avoids the Phantom's first strike. He uses the Force to push it back and tries to strike at him. The Phantom turns and manages to block this attack. He moves with all the experience that Sifo-Dyas contains. Their blades ignite, the yellow archives in yellow light. As they duel, he reaches out through the living force, feeling past the shape of the living, past the face it wears, and the fear it projects. And underneath it all, there is nothing but blackness. Not a mind, not a will, a tether, a thread of stolen essence stretched thin across the dark. Suddenly, the spirit recoils, and he's struck from behind by a burst of force judgment. Master Plo steps into the light, his hand crackling with electricity. The spirit turns to face the two of them, and seems to realize how dire the situation is before disappearing, coming apart like smoke facing a strong wind.
It is a phantom. Will it come back?
Not tonight. He lowered the tether but did not sever it. Whoever is holding it will need time to gather the thread again. But first, we find Sifo-Dyas.
They find Sifo-Dyas exactly in the same warehouse they saw in their visions. He is in his bed, eyes open but unseeing, his body present and his mind somewhere else entirely. Plo sits beside him and takes his hand. He can feel the absence where the part of his essence was spirited
Getting
away.
almost done with the black, I feel like.
There is a thread, thin, but it is there, and it runs out of him like a wire pulled taut. Someone is holding the other end.
Can we free him?
I am not sure. It is worth a try.
The two of them raise their hands over his body and concentrate, recalling their lessons in force healing. They work with his natural rhythm, pushing out the darkness that was like a parasite worming its way into him and then driving it off. Qui-Gon senses those tethers. He sees them when he closes his eyes and directs his energy to shear them away. He is partially successful. After their fight, its hold on him is weakened, but not fully dissolved. He manages to get most of it, enough that Sifo-Dyas wakes up. To get the rest of it will take time.
What's happening?
We shall explain on the way, but we must head to Camino now.
Camino is gray and wet and vast, the ocean stretching in every direction beneath the platform's city legs. Qui-Gon stands at the viewport and watches it and thinks about Dooku, about the years between them. They are met at the landing platform not by Lama Su, but by a protocol droid and a detachment of Senate observers. The observers are polite. They are also very clearly there to ensure the two Jedi understand that their authority here has changed. They glance at Sifo-Dyas warily, as if suspecting he would attack them. But the somber Jedi says nothing. He doesn't even look at them as they are led inside. Dooku finds them before they reach the main facility. He is leaning against the railing of an observation deck overlooking the cloning bays below. He looks older than Qui-Gon remembers.
I wondered when you would come. I expected Master Plo first, if I'm honest. But of course, you brought Master Sifo-Dyas because you thought his presence might intimidate me. I brought him because he's my colleague, and this concerns him as much as anyone. I came because you are my master, and there are things you deserve to hear from me. Then speak. Your master is using you, Dooku. This path will not end well for you or anyone.
It is true. I have seen it in all my visions.
Ah, Master Plo. I see old age has not served you well. Visions do not concern me. They are so often unreliable, as Master Sifo-Dyas can tell you.
I am neither senile nor a fool, Count. I see things more clearly than you. The Chancellor is using you, and he will throw you away like any other pawn. But if you do not believe me, I hope you will at least believe your own ears.
Master, you know I would never say anything to trick you, so please, do not mistake what I say next for deception.
I'm listening.
Qui-Gon does not soften it. He lays out everything. The phantom, the tether, the way Sifo-Dyas lies in his quarters with his essence stripped away from him and his face worn like a mask by something built from his own fear and grief. He explains that whoever did this did not simply corrupt Sifo-Dyas' mind from the outside. They reached inside him and took a piece of it, shaping it into something useful, and then turned it loose in the temple to discredit the Jedi. He watches Dooku's face carefully as he says it. Dooku does not move for a long moment after Qui-Gon finishes. His jaw tightens. His eyes do not meet theirs. Instead, he looks at Sifo-Dyas. He sees what he did not notice earlier, how the man sways unsteadily, and his eyes appear more sunken than before, and how his aura seems to flicker unsteadily. When he first saw him, he told himself that it was just sickness, paranoia, the continued issues that have plagued this poor man. But when he forces himself to look, he knows it is nothing of that sort. This is no sickness, no natural one at least. It was caused only by one person, and it sickens Dooku to think about how Plagueis is even capable of this upon his allies.
I was told nothing of this. We know. This was not part of any plan.
Then perhaps that is worth thinking about. What else might you not have been told?
But before Dooku can answer, the cold returns. Maul emerges from the shadows at the end of the corridor, his red blade already lit, his yellow eyes moving across the three of them, but then his eyes focus on Sifo-Dyas, and he raises his hand. Behind him, barely visible in the dark, is the Phantom. Plo steps forward, and Maul comes to meet him. The two of them crash together in a blaze of red and blue, the sound of their blades ricocheting off metal walls. Maul is faster than Plo expects. The Night Brother takes full advantage of it, leaping from place to place and throwing himself at him. He expects to overwhelm him through sheer power and aggression, as he had nearly done with Qui-Gon. However, Plo does not falter so easily. Instead of backing down, he plants his feet in the ground and begins countering each attack. When Maul advances and tries to press forward, he is nearly taken down by a burst of Force judgment. He looks up in surprise as the Jedi springs into action and brings his lightsaber down in a vicious slash. Although he sidesteps, Maul is immediately greeted by Qui-Gon, who advances on him from the side. The Jedi thrusts forward, and Maul finds himself pressed on two sides. Rather than surrender, though, he whirls and dodges through these attacks, using his agility to keep them back. Meanwhile, Dooku faces off against the advancing Phantom on his own. Rather than wait for him to attack, he goes on the offensive, pressing his attack and slashing forward to keep the Phantom pressed. As he's pushed back to a corner by a flurry of attacks, it seems like he will be overwhelmed, but Qui-Gon suddenly calls out,
"No, Master. It might harm Master Sifo-Dyas."
The distraction is enough for him to pause and allow the Phantom to regain momentum. He lunges forward, lightsaber clashing with Dooku's. Their eyes lock, and then they begin to exchange blows. Qui-Gon watches them clash and blocks another blow from Maul, who roars at him. But thankfully, Master Plo strikes from the side and forces him to turn his attention to face him. Suddenly, he ducks and breaks off the battle. Instead, he moves toward them, trying to rush Sifo-Dyas. The Jedi Master is struggling on his knees, clearly having an internal war as he grapples with the tethers that tie him and the Phantom. So far, they are equally matched. But Qui-Gon reaches toward the Phantom, pressing through the living force to find the tether beneath it. It is harder here, as it has had little time to rebuild itself. The Phantom is stronger, more coherent, fed by Maul's presence. Qui-Gon closes his eyes. He lets the noise of the fight fall away and reaches deeper. He finds the thread. He begins very carefully to pull. Too hard, and it might harm Sifo-Dyas as well. The Phantom screams, but he keeps working, not letting it distract him. It manages to break off from Dooku to lunge at Qui-Gon. There is a vibration in the Force that makes the air around it shimmer. However, Dooku tackles him and sends them both sprawling. At the railing, Maul drives a strike at Plo's shoulder and tries to counter, but Maul is moving. Although he started off quite well, he is starting to tire. Maul knows it too, and his strikes come faster, more confident, angled to end this quickly so he can turn his attention to Qui-Gon. As he works, the pain in Sifo-Dyas subsides, and he looks at things with less pain, and for the first time he begins to see things clearly. He watches the duel, Maul and his three companions, and then he sees it, the Phantom that bears his face. It fights on, its body moving with robotic grace, unleashing every ounce of training that he possesses in life, and pressing them hard. Sifo-Dyas feels the subtle connection in him, the piece of him that resides in that being, feeding it and keeping him strong, and slowly begins to rise. Qui-Gon gets up to see this. His eyes widen and he opens his mouth, but it's too late. A lightsaber ignites and plunges itself into Sifo-Dyas' body. The Jedi drops to his knees, his grip loosening on his weapon as he finishes driving it into his stomach.
"No! I am connected to it. So if it falls, so do I. There has to be another way. Another way? No. You said to choose my own destiny, and that is what I shall do. Let this choice be my own.
And so the phantom shrieks, this time not of anger, but of pain as it disappears into the mist, fully dissipating in the wind. This leaves only Maul, who stands alone as the three surround him. Maul snarls and splits his attention, but the advantage of the fight shifts immediately. Plo recovers his footing and moves to flank, and with two masters on him, Maul's advantage of speed dissipates. He is fast enough to handle one of them. He is not fast enough to handle the three directions at once. He doesn't see the opportunity until it is already gone. Plo takes it and drives his lightsaber into his side. Dooku deactivates his blade and does not look at either of them for a long time.
I was not told.
I know. I will help you.
He walks over to Sifo Dyas and slowly closes his eyes. When the Jedi return to Coruscant, Dooku retracts everything he had claimed before. The claims of the Jedi interference and corruption, the creation of the clone army, all of it. And unlike Sifo Dyas, he has evidence to back it up. All of it is presented before the Senate, which can only watch in horror. For the Chancellor, whose entire career was built on this crisis, it is a sudden reversal and leaves his support evaporating almost overnight. Soon, a call for impeachment is made, but Palpatine does not stick around to hear it. With the Jedi and the Senate on him, he flees to places unknown. That's our theory. The Star Wars galaxy is filled with exciting stories and possibilities.
Interesting.
What if Mace Windu survived and saved Anakin on Mustafar?
Hello, my friends. The fuel shortage in Russia is critical. Today we'll look into the last refinery that was switched offline by Ukrainian drones yesterday. The last refinery, I mean the last one that actually supplied Crimea with fuel, diesel and gasoline. It's now gone. It's burning. So it doesn't do that anymore. But what a better day to start your day or end your day, wherever you're watching this from, than Yevgeny Kolman. Russian blogger with a very filthy mouth and a very emotional way of saying how bad things are in Russia. Let's listen to him, because he brings a new video to us. 4 a.m. in the morning he goes for a gas run. Operation Fill Up the Tank started 4 a.m. To get some effing fuel, I had to drive around 3 different gas stations. They're only giving 20 liters per customer. An oil-producing country, I love it. That's McDonald's, man. I'm loving it. What a great way to start the morning. No need for a cold shower when you can wake up drenched in effing sweat. Why am I saying all this? Because they already struck Ufa. He means the Ufa oil refinery. You all know what that means. I hope that Omsk plant can save us and keep everyone supplied. Let me answer that for you. No, it can't. But I really don't want to end up driving a Volga or Zhiguli and filling it with 76 octane gasoline. 76? Damn, do they make that in the West anymore? I don't think so. The plant has to be protected, but it will take 5 billion rubles.
Close to matching the two sections together.
You know what's the worst thing about these plants being protected? Yes, the protection money has been allocated from the Kremlin for each of these oil refineries, 5 billion rubles, whatever the amount is, and you can buy nets for it to come down for the chimneys and make these like triangles of netted areas that drones cannot go through. Or you can buy yourself a brand new Mercedes Maybach S600 smuggled in through Kazakhstan, if you are the one receiving those funds. And a lot of Russians make that choice. So this is why we see some refineries netted, defended, and other refineries not defended. But it doesn't really matter, because the Moscow refinery was defended. Still, it went up in flames. Although, just like with our president, the people around him might be feeding him and doing absolutely F all. We've stretched fishing nets. He's talking about the nets, yeah? Who the F are
it's so
you trying to
hot.
catch with those Baltic sprots or drones? Sprot is this very, very small, tiny fish, you know, you catch by the hundreds of thousands. Drones probably won't come here, though they might from Kazakhstan. Again, with the Russian propaganda point that from Kazakhstan these drones are flying. Missiles definitely can. Well, we have gotten our fair share daily dose of Yevgeny Kolman, which is the Prigozhin substitute nowadays. We can move on to more serious matters. When I say serious matters, I of course mean that the very last oil refinery that was able to supply Crimea with any kind of oil products has been switched off by the Ukrainians 24 hours prior to making this video. Let's first of all zoom out so you see what we're talking about. See, Slavyansk on Kuban, that's the name of this settlement city right here, and this is where Crimea is. So, southern Russia, very close to occupied Ukraine, and if we zoom in, I don't even know where the refinery is, let's just find it. Oh, that wasn't very difficult. Look at that. I can just do it using Google Maps on satellite mode. Because these refineries, they're so easy to spot. I'm guessing they're quite easy to attack also. Look at that. Massive. Ukrainian defense forces struck the Slavyansk Eco refinery in Slavyansk on Kuban, Krasnodar territory overnight. Heavy smoke spread across the city after the attack on the plant that processes up to 5.2 million tons of crude per year and supplies Russian army and occupied Crimea. Now that's wow-wee-wow. Look at that black smoke. It's not rainy right now there. You can see the clear sky, so it probably will not rain oil. But still, the smoke is good enough for me. Oh, it is truly massive. We also have a video done with a good camera with nice zoom. Thank you, random Russian person, for having such a good phone and recording this for us. Very nice. The Crests destroyed the last oil refinery in the south in Slavyansk on Kuban. It was from there that was somehow being supplied to
Stretch my neck like my baby told me.
That's, by the way, Russians talking. The exodus have begun. There are now 4,000 vehicles parked outside of Crimea. What this sentence means is people don't have fuel in their cars, they cannot get it anywhere, so they ditch their car and walk on foot. Or on bicycles. Soon people will be leaving Crimea on foot. Results of the rule of the Kremlin princes. But thanks to Russian kids having phones, we actually have a video of how the Russian youth, young boys, react to the attack on this very last oil refinery that supplied Crimea. Check it out. Quiet. Drone flying right here. You what? What he was yelling here and running is free gasoline, let's go. Yeah, they're blowing up our refinery. Let's go get free gasoline. So, as I mentioned before, I mean, in these videos, I try to open up the Russian psyche. If these Russian lads see their own country being burned by Ukrainians, they don't feel sad by it because it's not their oil refinery, it's not their money, and they don't feel like it's their country. It's Putin's, it's FSB's, it's the Kremlin's, it's the Tsars, but never the people. That's the greatest myth in Russia, the revolution for the people. It never was. So these lads very happy to see the fireworks, and they don't feel like they have been struck at all. That would be the case in Estonia, for example. You feel deep connection to the country, the heritage, the flag. If somebody attacks Estonia, people take it personally, they don't like it, and there will be revenge. In Russia, not so much. The mindset is very different. There's no ownership of your land. That's why they trash around also. That's why they throw trash on the ground and don't maintain stuff, because they don't feel the ownership, owner relationship with their own country.
I've got basically this section of black to
go
over and hit any areas I've missed or haven't filled out yet.
To shape wood into something useful. And this is my video/military blog studio. Here I also need the right tools to be efficient. What tools do I mean? This on the back of my phone is not a credit card. This is actually my secret weapon that enables me to be multiple times more efficient in my work as a military blogger. When I make a Ukrainian update video, I don't read it from a script. I speak from the context in my head. Since I am so familiar with the Ukrainian war field, I also have X and Blue Sky where I post text analysis similar to my videos. But how to turn my in-the-moment speech in my videos into coherent readable text for my reading audiences? Well, this is the Plod Note Pro from Plod, the sponsor of today's video. And it's one of the most important tools that I use literally every single day. Plod is my AI note-taking assistant, and I found it's even more valuable than it sounds. It turns every one of my meetings and important conversations into clean, actionable, and shareable notes with zero effort. All I have to do is press the button in the back, and Plod is instantly engaged in whenever I need it. Even for phone calls, without draining my phone battery or forcing me to keep the screen open the whole time. Recording and transcribing my conversation, while also providing me with helpful summaries and action items so I remember everything important without having to re-listen to recordings or reread transcripts. Unless I want to. Technologically, this thing is impressive. It picks up conversations from up to 5 meters or 16 feet away, and it runs for 30 to 50 hours non-stop, which makes it far more reliable than relying on my phone. Personally, I've had it for many months, and I've literally only had to charge it once. And Claude also meets top global privacy standards, which is extremely important on any tool I'm using to record sensitive information. As a military blogger, and as a father, I value efficiency in my work and personal life since it ties into my time spent with my family. More efficient at work, more time spent with my wife and daughter. Claude is my 24/7 AI secretary, saving me tens of minutes every day, which compounds fast into hours saved per week. I have been very skeptical of AI from the start, but with Claude, I see that I can use it as a tool, elevating my work, not turn it into robotic AI slurp. As the saying goes, it's about a man wielding the tool, not about the tool itself. I think you'll enjoy it too. Click the link in the description to try the Claude Note Pro for yourself and reclaim your time and your
Hey,
focus.
baby!
Thanks again to Claude for sponsoring today's video. My friends, in the recent videos, we haven't really watched videos
I
from
see you there.
Frontline because the fuel crisis is bad enough and interesting enough, but
How's
now
your
we
shift
go to the
going?
Frontline. This is Belgorod. You can't call it the front line, although it's a Russian oblast, but it's so close to it. This is one of Russian army's fuel depots. Secret, hidden away, but you can spot it by these 1-tonnage squares that are filled with diesel and gasoline, and Ukrainian drones spotted it, so not much needed here, only one FPV, the whole place goes up in flames. Look at that. This must be painful. You're lacking as it is,
Oof.
and then your whole fuel depot for the army goes up in flames also.
Are they meeting? That seems to be the question in Qatar today with regards to the war with Iran. The top U.S. negotiators are there. Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff traveled to Doha after the president declared on Truth Social that the Iranians were looking to meet. Iran, however, has yet to confirm that it does. It has not confirmed any meeting with the United States. Scripps News senior White House correspondent Haley Bull is live on the North Lawn. And Haley, what are the administration's plans at this hour for these proposed talks?
Well, Del, those talks taking place in Doha, but at this point do not appear to be direct negotiations between the United States and Iran as divergences continue to emerge on the Strait of Hormuz. As you mentioned, Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and the president's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, meeting with Qatari leaders as well as mediators today on the memorandum of understanding between the U.S. and Iran, according to a senior administration official. Now, tomorrow, the official says the U.S.
I'm almost done with the
Iranian
black.
delegations will take
The
part
shade
in,
of black, at least.
take part in technical talks with mediators Qatar and Pakistan, but separately. Now, a spokesperson for Qatar's foreign ministry said mediators are working as go-betweens amidst the ongoing technical level meetings, which are broken down into tracks, including a nuclear track, the economy and strait, and regional security, to name a few. Meanwhile, as you mentioned, the Iranians have not said that they have not planned a meeting with the U.S. at any level at this time. And this comes after tensions in the Strait of Hormuz flared over the weekend, with Iran firing on commercial shipping vessels and the U.S. responding with strikes against Iranian military targets before an official said the sides will stand down and technical talks continued. Now, the Iranians are expecting those discussions in Doha on implementing the memorandum of understanding on Iran's assets and have continued to publicly try to exert control on the strait, while the U.S. has maintained that there can be no fees to use the strait and international waterway, and that unfrozen assets, any Iranian unfrozen assets, will be used to purchase American-made goods. And we are told from an official that no assets have been released at this point. Meanwhile, traffic in the Strait of Hormuz has continued despite all of this, Del. So we are closely watching to see what.
So there's the black. At least everything I saw on my first pass.
Also keeping a
So
close
we're
watch on
gonna-
our prices and paint at the pump. Scripps News Senior White House correspondent Haley Beauforest. Haley, thank you very much.
Hello. Our story begins 4 years after the fall of the Galactic Republic.
Man.
Creation.
Iranian state media is reporting that a cargo ship has run aground in the Strait of Hormuz. Tehran is only identifying the vessel as a foreign container ship that had veered off the route set by the Revolutionary Guard. U.S. officials have not yet confirmed the report. The memorandum of understanding between the U.S. and Iran called for the strait to be reopened without tolls for 2 months while a peace deal is negotiated. But only a few dozen vessels per day have passed through the strait, or about a third of the pre-war level. This morning, representatives with both the U.S. and Iran are meeting in Qatar to begin technical talks through a mediator. No face-to-face talks are scheduled.
We are here in Tallinn, the capital of Estonia, a NATO member of 1.3 million people sitting at Russia's doorstep.
For nearly half a century, Estonia lived under Soviet occupation, with its people subject to Russification and repression. After regaining independence in 1991, Estonia turned westward, securing membership in both the EU and NATO. Shaped by its own history, Estonia remained keenly
Where'd the
aware of the
baggies
danger
go?
posed by Moscow.
Oh, there they are.
This week we'll be spending time in Tallinn.
How's
but
work
also
going,
visiting
baby?
exercises in the southeast part of the country near the Russian border. We'll be talking to government officials, soldiers, and ordinary Estonians to
I'm doing
understand
good.
just how well the Baltic country is prepared for Russian threat. But before we
Hot.
get into it, we are on a quest to find 4,000 new paying members. If you're thinking about signing up, now is the time. The link is below.
As the war in Ukraine rages on, Kiev has warned that Estonia could soon become Russia's next target. Lodged between Russia, Belarus, and the heavily armed Russian exclave of Kaliningrad, Estonia could be, according to analysts, quickly cut off from its allies by Russian troops. But Estonian officials have pushed back against these warnings.
Is there an imminent threat of a conventional Russian attack on Estonia right now?
No, there isn't. We're a member of NATO. The NATO deterrence and defense posture here is a solid one, consisting of not just our own forces, but also of allies that are here integrated into our defense forces.
Does Russia currently have enough forces or military assets near Estonia to launch a conventional attack against Estonia while the war in Ukraine is ongoing?
Not at this point. Well, what we currently see is that whatever units are produced or created, these units are moved into Ukraine. So Ukraine consumes all the Russian military capability, or most of it, at the moment.
But in the streets of Tallinn, the Russian threat feels close.
I'm thinking every day about that, and of course they are much bigger. We are tiny countries.
The situation was quite similar in Ukraine before the war started. Everyone was
There we go.
Like everything is fine, don't worry, it's just talks.
Even if they do not see a Russian invasion as imminent, Estonian leaders have no illusions that Moscow remains a long-term military threat. And if the war in Ukraine were to end and free up Russian forces for redeployment elsewhere, the strategic calculations for Estonia could shift quickly.
So we
I think I might, because I'm sweating like a pig.
its forces to attack the Baltic states. As soon as there is some sort of conclusion to the Russian aggression to Ukraine, we think that there is a possibility that Russia might will to test the Baltic states, but NATO altogether.
We know that they have the plan of military
it's 74.
reform, which then would
Knocked it down to
increase
72.
the Russian military forces in the NATO eastern flank considerably.
Bloop.
The fulfilling of the plan depends on
Bloop.
the available resources. But
I got my first color done, baby.
We have to, of course, base our calculations and plans based on the Russian ambition.
These plans include ensuring that Estonia's military has the best technology to defend against a Russian attack. As the Russia-Ukraine war has demonstrated, drones have been the fastest developing, most game-changing aspect of modern warfare, and Estonia has been paying attention.
Ooh, I could do
At
that.
the
I
country's
forgot I
first of
have
its
that little
kind drone
fan.
center in central
I'll be right
Estonia,
back.
Guernsey, volunteers are learning.
Pause this. Play this, and then I will be, because I gotta pee anyway. So I'll be right back.
I awoke with the grain in my palm and the chisel at rest. A plank on the bench and a knot in its chest.
Hello, I'm back. Nope. Never had to switch back to the VDE. I love Wendigoon.
Making a movie is nothing short of a miracle. It takes hundreds of people, thousands of working hours, but there's still a chance that the end result may not meet the quality the creatives were hoping for. It's even more of a miracle if the cast and crew finish a movie completely unscathed. And no time was this truer than when Hollywood was in its infancy. The audiences that went to see The Wizard of Oz in 1939 were wowed by both the technical and musical mastery.
Yeah, it does.
Silver screen. For a
That
couple
is
of hours, the viewers got to leave our messy
Chef's
reality
kiss.
behind
Great
into a
idea.
world of color and music.
Great idea.
Though Oz was a wondrous land for the characters, it was hell on earth for the cast. Because behind those cheerful munchkins and singing scarecrows laid a trail of broken bones, addiction, and melted faces. Today we're following the yellow brick road, not toward Oz, but backwards in time, past tornadoes and Technicolor, to discover the origins of L. Frank Baum's magical world. The chaotic stage productions that warped his creation, the murderous ambitions of movie studios, and the way Hollywood's enchanted castle was built on the backs of exhausted performers. Hollywood's version of Happily Ever After involves lawsuits, new labor laws, and a surprising amount of green paint. So hello everybody, grab your ruby slippers and get to hear about the terrible world of Wizard of Oz. Again, not the movie, the making of the movie, which is pretty much the opposite of the movie's whole tone. This story has gone down in the history of filmmaking as an example of what not to do. As a matter of fact, a lot of lawmakers consider it just that. The number of people who you can track straight up died from this production is outstanding. And anytime you hear a story about how labor laws were changed around filmmaking or disasters in filmmaking, it will normally loop back to this story in some way. So today, we're
I know.
Also, don't.
So the story I know from The Wizard of Oz. The story I know, that's weird. I know from not the Scarecrow, the Tin Man. I believe the actor who played the Tin Man was really allergic to the paint they used. And I know they also encourage Judy Garland to smoke a bunch of cigarettes to stay thin.
Ask questions as to why there's giant cane statues all around the room. If you're curious, just go watch the video on Wendigoon. That's all the explanation you get. So if all that sounds interesting to you, then stick around after the ad as we talk about the tragedy of The Wizard of Oz. Money can be hard to manage, and debt is even worse. Minimum payments aren't designed to get you out of debt, they're designed to keep you there as long as possible. Thankfully, today's sponsor, PDS Debt, is here to help. They can reduce half of what you owe on credit cards, personal loans, and medical bills, and it starts with a free 30-second assessment at pds.com/wendigang. PDS Debt takes all of your debt and combines it into one easy plan. So instead of balancing multiple payments, you have one lower monthly payment. And savings start the day that you complete the 30-second assessment. Even something as innocuous as having a balance on your credit card is costing you money every day. So PDS Debt uses all of their data and all of your data to find a solution that makes the most sense for you. No minimum credit score is required, and like I said, the assessment's free. There's a reason PDS Debt is the top-rated company in the industry with thousands of 5-star reviews and an A+ rating on the Better Business Bureau. Debt is hard enough as is, and doing it by yourself is even worse. So let PDS Debt be the friend in your corner to help you get out of it. And you can get your free 30-second personalized assessment today.
What are you up to, baby?
At pdsdebt.com/wendigang
Take your Switch?
or scan the QR code. Again, you can get your assessment for free and see if they can help you in whatever your situation might be. Again, that's scan the QR code or head to the link in the description at pdsdebt.com/wendigang to start tackling your debt today. Thank you to PDS Debt for sponsoring the channel. Their link will be in the description, and we are now back to the video. We are going to go ahead and get into it, but as always, thank you for watching. Our story begins in Kansas, or not actually Kansas. It begins in upstate New York, in the village of Chittenango, where Lyman Frank Baum was born on May 15th, 1856. His parents owned an oil barrel factory and a large estate called Rose Lawn. As a child, Frank was pampered, surrounded by wealth and roses instead of cornfields. He detested rigid discipline. When his parents sent him to Peekskill...
Wow, you just have a whole family of Nintendo with you today, huh?
Brought on by the harsh environment and physical punishment. The incident terrified young Frank.
That's funny.
A heart attack to secure his release. Free from the Academy's clutches, Frank discovered a passion for storytelling and publishing. His father bought him a printing press, just like, any good father would.
Help me focus and keep my arm off of sticking to the thing.
Empire, a stamp collector's newsletter. Your average hobby for someone in the 1800s. He dabbled in acting, theater management, and chicken breeding. But last one feels a little different than the others, but okay. He wrote a melodrama called The Maid of Erin that toured the Midwest, but true to Baum's pattern, collapsed financially. In 1882, he married Maud Gage, the daughter of famous suffragist Madeline Jocelyn Gage, and the couple eventually had 4 sons. As a traveling salesman and store owner, Baum's restlessness drove him from one failed venture to another, but he never stopped writing. He crafted children's stories inspired by the tales he told his sons each night. When he went to bed, he suffered recurring nightmares of a scarecrow chasing him across fields, an image that would both haunt and inspire him. By 1899, Baum teamed with illustrator W.W. Denslow to publish Father Goose, which became a bestseller. A year later, the duo released The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, published in September of 1900. Unlike the dark European tales
babe,
on,
question for you.
A sunny vision of a
Hold on. Question for you. Question for you. Are these like in order from top to bottom of like the most to the least, or is it random? I think you could handle Sims 3 or 4. I don't think you could handle 1 or 2 for sure. But what about the ordering of these? Is there a particular... okay. A lot of A in this corner. Aw, yeah. They buzzed his head. He wanted it buzzed, apparently. She sent me a picture. Oh, yeah.
Young girl whisked away to a land where good
I'm, like,
wishes
locked
were
in.
and shoes sparkled red. He deliberately removed violence. The Tin Woodman cries over insects he accidentally kills, and Dorothy makes friends instead of enemies. The book's optimism resonated with progressive-era readers. Critics compared it to Alice in Wonderland, but Baum insisted his goal was to create a distinctly American fairy tale. It's safe to say that he succeeded. By late 1900, the book had sold tens of thousands of copies and spawned a franchise.
Okay.
Baum later spun off 13 sequels, and when he died in 1919, other authors continued the series. But this was merely the first few steps along the road. Or the Yellow Brick Road. Okay. Success inevitably invites adaptation.
There you go.
In 1901, Baum partnered with Chicago producer Fred Hamlin and director Julian Mitchell to create a stage version of Oz. Unlike other adaptations of novels, this one was more like fan fiction on crack.
We did.
Hamlin
We did.
insisted on adding slapstick, new songs, and topical jokes. The resulting 1902 musical replaced Dorothy's dog companion with a cow named Imogen and introduced a love interest for Dorothy's uncle. Some changes would make it to the eventual film adaptation. The Good Witch conjured snowfall to neutralize the poppy field, the same device the film would later use. And the Cowardly Lion became a comic foil rather than a figure of sentiment. But then there were the diversions from the Wizard of Oz most of us know and love. The character known as the Tin Woodman was renamed Niccolo Chopper. The Wicked Witch was entirely removed from the script, I have no idea why, and a poet named Sir Dashamoff Daly roamed the Emerald City reciting rhymes. Other words, the first big adaptation of Oz threw out half the plot, added a cow, and still managed to enchant audiences. Nowadays, there would be an uproar on Twitter about all of the changes, and a demand to release whatever the equivalent of the Snyder Cut would be. But back then, it seemed that people were more open to major deviations from the source material. The musical premiered in Chicago on June 16, 1902. It opened on Broadway on January 20th, 1903 at the Majestic Theater and ran for 293 performances. After its Broadway success, the show toured the United States and Canada for 3 years. Audiences adored the catchy tunes and comedic bits, even if purists grumbled about Imogen. The production success convinced Baum that Oz could survive outside his books, though his involvement dwindled. The play essentially became an evolving vaudeville revue, or sketch show, for lack of a better term.
I need to
Characters
find.
like the Scarecrow and Tin Woodman would improvise local jokes.
I was getting hot again, and I realized my fan kicked off.
Once a piece of art leaves its
I
creator's
think I
control,
need
anything can
batteries.
happen, both good and bad.
BRB. Ugh. Hey, baby, do you remember where the batteries are? The kid grabbed them out. And I don't know where they are. But there's some of these might work. I'm back. Back in black. Yeah, I don't know what the kid did with all the batteries that were on the headboard. No, I'd taken all our rechargeables into the back, and the boy grabbed them, brought them out here thinking he needed them, and I haven't seen them since. They might be in his room for all I know. No, it's really not.
The musical toured, Baum formed his own film company, the Oz.
And I told him to put them back where he got them from, and of course I wasn't listened to.
Films like The Patchwork Girl of Oz and His Majesty the Scarecrow of Oz appeared between 1914 and 1915. They were charming, but financially disastrous. Audiences accustomed to theater weren't ready for silent fantasy. Baum's company went bankrupt, and he returned to writing. The silent films then fell into obscurity. In 1925, independent producer Chadwick Pictures released The Wizard of Oz, starring comedian Larry Simon and future comedian Oliver Hardy. This film took even more liberties than the 1902 musical. Dorothy, renamed Princess Dorothea, is a long-lost royal of Oz. The Scarecrow and Tin Man are disguised farmhands. The Tin Man is a villainous farmhand in tin armor. The Wizard is a charlatan disguised as a balloonist who partners with two bumbling farmhands to overthrow the royal order. The entire story reads like a slapstick imitation of the book, and audiences were unimpressed. The film bombed, and its rights quietly returned to the estate. When you look at its remains today, courtesy of YouTube of course, you can understand why MGM felt comfortable rewriting the story yet again in the 1930s. Because, you know, no one's going to miss this 1925 version. In 1937, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs proved that a colorful fairy tale could generate massive profits. MGM executive Louis B. Mayer and producer Marilyn Leroy smelled opportunity. Samuel Goldwyn had purchased the film rights to Oz in 1933 for $40,000, which is a little over $1 million today. Don't you love inflation? But he had done nothing with the rights. Then, in 1938, MGM bought the rights from Goldwyn for $75,000, or about $1.7 million today. The stakes were enormous. MGM wanted its own family blockbuster, and they invested in Technicolor equipment, musical numbers, and they hoped star power. Shirley Temple, 20th Century Fox's child superstar, was originally sought for the lead role of Dorothy, but for various reasons, the deal never came through. After an excellent screen test, Judy Garland, who at first was thought to be too old for the part at 16 years old, was given the role of Dorothy. The path to filming felt much more like a tornado, ironically enough, than a straight road.
I'm moving and grooving and
who began shooting in October of 1938.
bada bing
This
and
version of Dorothy wore a blonde wig and heavy, glamorous makeup. And if that sounds unfamiliar to you, that's because this version would never make it to the screen. When Thorpe made the Wicked Witch glamorous as well, producer Mervyn LeRoy and the heads at MGM panicked. After 2 weeks of filming, they fired Thorpe and scrapped his footage. George Cukor, known for his work with actresses, came in and advised that Dorothy should appear younger and more natural. Cukor changed Judy Garland's
I know.
look. He removed her wig.
I figured we'd do that together.
Made her pigtails messier. He spent only a week on the project and then passed the baton.
You need to pull last year's tax
tough,
return.
no-nonsense director
For sure.
shot most
I know
of the
that.
film we now recognize. Near the end of production, however, he left to finish Gone with the Wind, and King Vidor directed the Kansas scenes and the iconic Over the Rainbow sequence. Now, let's pause for a moment, and I want you to imagine you're Judy Garland. You're 16 years old, 5 feet tall, and you've spent your life performing at the insistence of a stage mother many describe as a bully. MGM hires you to star in its most ambitious picture to date, as the lead role. You watch as directors rotate through like guests at a revolving door, poked, prodded, costumed to look like a prepubescent farm girl. When the woman tasked with making you appear youthful is replaced by a man known for punching leading men, you might start to worry. But Judy couldn't worry because she was too busy being starved and drugged. If you want to appreciate The Wizard of Oz, you have to understand its production. From 1938 to 1939, MGM created a fantasy world from scratch, covering 25 acres of backlot with 65 elaborate sets. Something that would be impressive by today's standards and unheard of in the 30s. Producer Mervyn LeRoy bragged that they constructed quarter-scale models of the Emerald City, the Wicked Witch's Castle, and Munchkinland, then built them full scale from plaster. And
Okay,
it took
yeah,
months
we
for
can
them
do
to
that.
design and paint the yellow brick road. MGM's technical wizardry matched
Tomorrow.
its ambition. The studio used Technicolor cameras that were larger than refrigerators.
Pull, like I said, pull
each
taxes.
requiring enormous amounts of light.
You're gonna
The
need
intense
those for
lighting
sure.
was scorching hot and made the set feel like a sauna. Under those 100-degree conditions, actors in heavy costumes sweat profusely and often felt like they were going to faint. The crew shot with 8 Technicolor cameras. The film stock itself cost 4 times more than black and white, yet those saturated colors defined the film. Kansas appeared in sepia tone, and Oz burst into a rainbow world. I mean, imagine if they shot the film in black and white. It just wouldn't be the same. The tornado sequence was one of the picture's proudest innovations. Special effects supervisor Arnold Buddy Gillespie tested a rubber cone on set, but it sagged. Eventually, he built a 35-foot muslin sock attached to a steel track. Workers filled the muslin with Fuller's earth, otherwise known as ground clay, to give it weight and texture. The sock was then rotated, and dust was pumped into the air to blur its edges. To film the interior shots, cinematographers placed a camera inside the spinning muslin and double-printed miniature objects like farmhouses onto the tornado to simulate.
No problem. I appreciate you and all you're planning to do for this family.
They filmed
You
soap
impressed the
bubbles
heck out of
rising
me.
against a black background, then superimposed actress Billy Burke stepping out of a clear orb. Matte painter Warren Newcomb created hundreds of background paintings. The Emerald City glittering on
So
the
when do you
horizon,
think
Wicked
we might
Witch's
be able
Castle,
to
which was composited with
swing
black
getting
ash
me the
created
project
vistas
stuff that we have in the Amazon cart?
be physically built. If the
I'm
Wizard
just
of Oz
curious.
looks magical, that's because it was hand-painted, hand-stitched
Making
magic. That
conversation.
magic was performed under incandescent
Da, 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 da,
Judy
da,
Garland had been
da,
performing
da.
in vaudeville since she was
Da,
2 and a half.
da, da,
Her
da,
mother,
da, da.
Ethel Gum, managed
Da,
her
da.
daughters as a singing trio. When the family moved to California, Ethel pushed MGM to sign Judy in 1935. Judy's father died shortly after. She was left in the hands of studio executives and a mother who, according to Garland's later recollections, doled out pep pills.
Wendigoon is so quiet.
Candy. MGM marketed Garland as the all-American girl, but behind the scenes, they constantly criticized her appearance. She was 16, stood barely 5 feet, and they called her, quote, the fat little pig with pigtails. To keep her weight down, the studio gave her amphetamines in the
That's so
morning
mean.
and barbiturates at night. Producers also bound her chest to flatten her figure and inserted a rubber disc in her nose to make it button-like. She lived on chicken broth and cottage cheese in an attempt to keep her weight down. Sleeping more than 4 hours a night was considered lazy, yet she managed to deliver a performance that still moves audiences to this day. For her trouble, MGM paid her about $9,600 for the entire film, or around $233,000 a day. Certainly a nice payday at the time, but for everything she went through and would continue to endure, no amount of money would be enough to quell the pain. Judy wasn't the only person suffering on set. Actors Ray Bolger, the Scarecrow, Jack Haley, the Tin Man, and Burt Lahr, the Cowardly Lion, endured painful costumes. Bolger's mask was made of burlap. He sweat so much that the makeup fused with his skin, leaving scars he'd carry for life. Lahr's lion costume weighed nearly 50 pounds. Its head was sculpted from foam and real lion pelts. During filming, the suit became so saturated with sweat that it had to be dried out every night in an industrial oven. But the worst case belonged to the original Tin Man, Buddy Ebsen, a popular Broadway performer. The makeup department covered Ebsen's face and body in powdered aluminum mixed with a binding agent to create that iconic metallic sheen. After several days, Ebsen began complaining of shortness of breath. He collapsed in his dressing room and was rushed to the hospital. Doctors discovered his lungs were coated in aluminum particles. He spent 2 weeks in an oxygen tent and nearly died. MGM, fearing bad publicity, paid his hospital bills, apologized publicly, and fixed the issues on set. No, I'm completely kidding. They fired him and replaced him with another actor, Jack Haley. The production formulated the makeup into a paste so it was a little bit harder to breathe in, but Haley soon developed a serious eye infection from it. After months of pain, the studio finally figured out how to apply the paint safely. And Ebsen, the guy who went to the hospital over the movie, would never make it to the final film. Margaret Hamilton was cast as the Wicked Witch of the West only after MGM decided to abandon the glamorous, villainous look for what you might describe as a cackling, green-skinned hag. Hamilton's makeup included copper-based green face paint that was both toxic and flammable. It had to be removed with alcohol and took a considerable amount of time. The mix of chemicals burned her skin, and the makeup was so toxic that she could not eat while in the costume. She had to drink through a straw, and her and others were also, quote, banned from eating lunch inside the MGM cafeteria because the sight of them eating in their makeup was deemed too disgusting. Imagine they just cover your face in copper so you can't eat food, and then they're like, well, you can't not eat food near us, disgusting animal. The worst accident occurred while filming the scene.
I have no idea.
Witch disappears from Munchkinland in a burst of flames.
She
On
wasn't
one
even
particular
chubby.
take, the trap door beneath Hamilton failed to open in time, and she was engulfed in a fiery blast that caught on her broom and hat. Scalding her chin, the bridge of her nose, her right cheek, and the right side of her forehead. The eyelashes and eyebrow on her right eye had been burned off. Her upper lip and eyelid were badly burned. When she looked down, her skin had been burned off her hand. The studio called her the next day, worried for her well-being and telling her to take all the time she needed. I'm kidding again. They called the next day asking when she was coming back to work. After 6 weeks of recovery, she returned to set, but the nerves in her hands were still so exposed that rather than wear makeup on them, she wore green gloves. Refusing to perform any stunts involving fire, I wonder why, the studio was forced to hire a stunt double for Margaret, Betty Danko. During a flying sequence atop a smoking broomstick, the broom exploded, how does a broom explode? The broom exploded, causing a burst so forceful that Danko's hat and wig were torn loose. She was in the hospital for 11 days and later recalled that, quote, I felt as though my scalp was coming off. She never worked again. Meanwhile, the actors playing the flying monkeys were dangled from piano wires 30 feet above the set. Several wires snapped, sending performers crashing to the floor. Miraculously, no one died, but a ton of them were injured. The Scarecrow and Tin Man, much like Hamilton, were also not allowed to eat while wearing their makeup. They too drank through straws and ate only after scraping off layers of latex and paint, a process that took hours. This rule added to the already punishing schedule. Filming lasted 6 months, call times were at dawn, and the actors often worked until midnight. Buddy Ebsen later joked that he understood the Tin Man's longing for a heart. He lost his to corporate indifference. You would hope that for such a miserable experience, the actors would at least be compensated accordingly. However, the MGM accounting department didn't seem to put much value in human comfort or pain for the lack thereof. Judy Garland earned about $5,000 a week, while Margaret Hamilton was paid $21,000, partly because of her burn injuries and the fact that she was already an established character actress. Contrast, Ray Bolger, Jack Haley, and Burt Lahr each received around $72,000, nearly 8 times what Judy Garland made. One of Hollywood's most infamous anecdotes, the dog portraying Toto, earned $125 per week, which is more than some of the actors on set. Filming wrapped on March 16, 1939. MGM spent roughly $2.8 million on the project, an exorbitant sum for the time. It's the equivalent of $67 million in today's money. The film premiered on August 15, 1939 in Oconomowoc, Wisconsin, followed by a Hollywood premiere and a national release. Despite critical praise, The Wizard of Oz initially underperformed at the box office. World War II dominated headlines, and audiences were more interested in films like Gone with the Wind. MGM re-released the picture 10 years later in 1949, and only then did it begin to turn a profit. And then television syndication in the 1950s cemented it as a classic. Millions of baby boomers saw the film during yearly network airings, where they fell in love with the
I don't know who
dog
Lisa
spirit
Minnelli
of
is,
the
baby.
Lollipop Guild. Ironically, the film that nearly killed its cast lived on as a family staple. Like any cultural touchstone, The Wizard of Oz spawned some urban legends as well. One persistent myth holds that the snow in the poppy field scene was made of asbestos. While asbestos snow was used in some Hollywood productions, there's no evidence MGM used it here. Instead, they used bleached cornflakes and powdered marble. But perhaps the most infamous rumor, the one that a lot of you have probably heard of, and you probably thought I was going to cover in this video, and even though I'm saying that it's not real, I technically still am, are the claims of a depressed munchkin hanging themselves on set, and that this dead actor can be seen swinging in the background of the film. Now, while this would be really cool and dark, well, not cool if someone actually did that, but it would be cool if, like, okay, well, not the actor, it'd be cool if they randomly threw in a super dark thing, like one of the characters doing it, not the actor. You get what I mean. In reality, the figure is a large bird from the Los Angeles Zoo wandering on set. While an actor did not hang themselves in the film, in the case of Oz, the injuries and exploitation were bad enough. After the film's release, Judy Garland became MGM's Golden Girl. She starred in Babes in Arms, Meet Me in St. Louis, and Easter Parade. Yet the same control and substance abuse that characterized the making of Oz followed her for life. Garland's mother continued to manage her career, and MGM executives forced her to maintain a grueling schedule. At 21, she married bandleader David Rose. By 23, she was divorced and remarried to director Vincent Minnelli. She had a daughter, Liza Minnelli, and then divorced again. Garland's addiction to amphetamines and barbiturates worsened. She suffered multiple nervous breakdowns. In 1950, MGM fired Garland for failing to show up on set. She later attempted suicide, which some believed would mark the end of her career. Yet Garland heroically staged several comebacks. Her 1951 London concert series was a triumph, and her 1961 performance at Carnegie Hall is still regarded as one of the greatest live recordings ever. She won an Oscar nomination for A Star is Born in 1954 and hosted her own television show. Despite these successes, Garland was in debt and emotionally exhausted. On June 22, 1969, she was found dead in her London bathroom from an overdose on barbiturates at just 47 years old. Judy Garland's life exemplifies how the cruelty of the entertainment world can create stars and then just as quickly destroy them. Judy wasn't the only star from The Wizard of Oz whose later years consisted of personal disappointment. Roy Bolger enjoyed a successful Broadway career but never again reached the cultural ubiquity of the Scarecrow. Burt Lahr returned to Broadway and television but spent years typecast as characters similar to the Cowardly Lion. Margaret Hamilton embraced her image as the Wicked Witch, appearing on television and advertising campaigns, but she wouldn't last in Hollywood, later leaving film behind to teach kindergarten. Jack Haley continued acting but never forgot that he almost lost his sight. Even Toto, actually a female dog named Terry, continued working in Hollywood until her death in 1945. Buddy Ebsen, after recovering from his aluminum poisoning, did gain fame decades later as Jed Clampett on the Beverly Hillbillies. For most of these performers, Oz was both a blessing and a curse. It immortalized them, but also condemned them to a lifetime of addictions, physical scars, and constantly being compared to younger versions of themselves. One of the central tragedies of The Wizard of Oz, and Hollywood in general, is the exploitation of children within film, especially at the time. Judy Garland's story is unfortunately not unique. In the 1920s, child star Jackie Coogan earned millions from his films, but when he turned 21, he discovered his parents had spent almost all of it. Public outrage led California to pass the Coogan Act, also known as the California Child Actors Bill, in 1939. The law required that a portion of a child actor's earnings be placed in a trust, restricted parents' access to their children's wages, and allowed minors to void contracts that did not serve them. Studio teachers were mandated to be on set to ensure children received education and limited working hours. However, enforcement varied across states, and families sometimes circumvented the trust requirements. You know, it's kind of crazy that parents would find
Doing the
ways to
screen
circumvent
now.
laws to protect their children later in life, but hey, that show
I've
is
never
for you.
heard of her.
The law also didn't regulate the psychological environment. Stage parents like Ethel Gum continue to push their children relentlessly. Only decades later would unions and advocacy groups begin addressing mental health and long-term financial security for young performers. While Oz employed a few juvenile actors, most notably the actors who played the Munchkins, the Coogan Act had little immediate impact on their treatment. MGM famously paid the Munchkin actors $50 a week while spending $100 a week to hire little people for promotional tours. The torturous production of The Wizard of Oz wasn't an isolated incident. While today there are numerous safety measures put in place to protect the cast and crew, inevitably there will be lapses and accidents. In one of cinema's earliest stunt disasters, comedian Buster Keaton filmed a scene for Sherlock Jr. where he grabs a water tower spout and is pulled to the ground. He immediately stood and continued working, but he had unknowingly fractured his neck. The injury went untreated for years until a doctor discovered the healed vertebra. Keaton's willingness to risk his life became part of his legend, but it foreshadowed a long history of filmmakers normalizing dangerous stunts. Filming John Huston's The African Queen in the Belgian Congo was both physically arduous and medically catastrophic. The crew drank contaminated water and many contracted dysentery. Actress Katharine Hepburn suffered severe illness. She would later detail her constant
Katharine
bouts of
Hepburn was
vomiting
so
while
pretty.
performing. Director Huston and actor Humphrey Bogart avoided sickness by drinking whiskey instead of water, which I guess works. On July 23rd, 1982, director John Landis filmed a Vietnam War sequence in Twilight Zone, the movie. Actor Vic Morrow was carrying two child actors when pyrotechnics exploded near a hovering helicopter. Pilot lost control and the helicopter crashed, killing Morrow and the two children. Landis and 4 crew members were charged with involuntary manslaughter but were later acquitted. The tragedy led to stricter child labor regulations and emphasized the need for experienced pilots and safety supervisors on set. It also marked one of the first times a director was criminally charged for an on-set death. Typically, safety regulations like that are tragically made in blood. In 1984, on the set of the TV show Cover Up, actor John Eric Hexum became bored during a long delay. He jokingly put a Prop 44 Magnum loaded with blank cartridges to his temple and pulled the trigger. Though blanks contain no bullets, the explosive charge...
I'll be right back. I'm gonna get some water. Scenes.
flew a piece of bone into his brain. Hexum was declared brain dead 6 days later. His death prompted new protocols on the handling of blanks and emphasized that firearms, even when safe, should be treated the same as those with live ammo until the cameras roll. Perhaps the most famous on-set death is that of actor Brandon Lee, son of martial arts legend Bruce Lee, who was filming the climactic scene of The Crow when tragedy struck. Earlier that day, prop makers used live ammunition to create dummy cartridges, but one bullet unknowingly became lodged in the barrel. Effectively, one of the rounds was underpowered, so the bullet didn't get all the way out of the barrel. When a blank cartridge was fired during the scene, it propelled the lodged bullet out of the gun, striking Lee in the abdomen and killing him. Crew members were criticized for failing to check the barrel between shots, and like Hexum's death, Lee's demise spurred film sets to hire professional armorers. Live ammunition was also banned entirely. This is a large reason why most action films nowadays, like the John Wick series, use airsoft guns, avoiding real firearms entirely. But film production tragedies aren't just limited to those in front of cameras. On February 20th, 2014, the independent film Midnight Rider was filming a dream sequence involving a hospital bed on an active elevated railroad trestle in Georgia without permission from the rail company. Let me say that again. An indie film set up a scene on an active railroad track without telling anyone from the railroad. In fact, the production had twice requested permission and had twice been denied, so the producers decided to just do it anyway. Hey, can we get permission to shoot a scene on the railroad tracks? No, actually, we need those. Okay. Hey guys, they said that we can just go ahead and do it. As they were shooting the scene, a freight train barreled down the track at 60 miles per hour. Crew members had less than a minute to clear the narrow, suspended tracks, with many instead pressing against the steel girds. Among these was camera assistant Sarah Jones. The train struck the hospital bed, sending debris flying. The shrapnel struck Jones, who fell into the train's fuel tank. Several were injured, but Jones was killed. Director Randall Miller pleaded guilty to involuntary manslaughter and criminal trespassing. He served just 1 year in jail and agreed to a 10-year ban on supervising productions. Jones's death ignited the Safety for Sarah movement, which pushed for improved location safety and clear chain of command communications. Unfortunately, no protocols can protect a crew from someone who chooses to be incredibly selfish, short-sighted, and stupid. Most recently, as many of you probably remember, on October 21st of 2021, actor Alec Baldwin fired a prop gun on the set of the Western feature film Rust, killing cinematographer Helena Hutchins and injuring director Joel Souza. Investigators discovered that live rounds had been mixed into the ammunition supply, a cardinal violation of film safety rules, or any safety rules. I mean, even if you're at a gun range, why on earth would you mix the fake bullets with the real ones? Armorer Hannah Gutierrez-Reed was charged with involuntary manslaughter and convicted. Baldwin faced charges that were later dismissed after prosecutors withheld evidence. The tragedy triggered industry-wide self-examination. Studios outright banned live ammunition on set, increased safety training, and replaced practical gunfire with CGI. Yet, as we've learned time and time again, reforms often seem to happen only after irreversible loss. In 2019, a stunt car crashed while filming the television series LA's Finest, injuring 9 crew members and leading to the amputation of showrunner Gabrielle Carteris's assistant's leg. During the 2017 filming of Deadpool 2, motorcyclist Joy Harris crashed through a glass window and died on her first day on set. That same year, stuntman John Berneker fell 22 feet while performing a fight scene for The Walking Dead and later died. In 1985, during production of Top Gun, veteran stunt pilot Art Scholl entered a spin for an aerial maneuver and never recovered. His plane plunged into the Pacific, and neither he nor the plane were ever found. Even routine set construction can be deadly. In 2020, a bucket filled with sand fell from a crane on the CW series Batwoman, paralyzing production assistant Amanda Smith. Every aspect of filmmaking, from stunts to set design, carries risk. Each death triggers investigations, lawsuits, and occasionally new safety rules. But the fact remains that modern filmmaking is often still dangerous work. The formation of guilds and unions has been a crucial counterweight to some of the persistent risks that have emerged on sets over the years. The Screen Actors Guild, or SAG, was founded in 1933 partly because actors were fed up with punishing hours and dangerous conditions. SAG negotiated better pay, residuals, and health insurance. Similar guilds formed for writers, directors, cinematographers, and crew, eventually offering similar protections. Yet union protections for safety took decades to codify. Many early agreements dealt more with wages and credit than with preventing injuries on set. The International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees, or IATSE, or IATSE, has become one of the most vocal advocates for crew safety. In recent years, IATSE's members have demanded limits on work hours, guaranteed rest periods, and professional safety training. The explosion of streaming productions stretched crews thin, dozens of shows shooting simultaneously, often with reduced budgets and accelerated schedules. In 2021, IATSE members voted overwhelmingly to authorize a strike, citing unsafe hours and inadequate compensation. A strike was averted through last-minute negotiations. The Coogan Act was a first step, leading to modern child labor laws becoming more robust. Today, children must have a mandatory trust fund, often called a Coogan account, into which a portion of their earnings are deposited. In California, 15% of a child actor's income must go into this account, but exploitation still happens. Social media and influencer culture have created new forms of child labor unregulated by film laws. Cases of kidfluencers have revived debates about parental control and financial protection, which it always kills me when you see these family vlog channels, how they'll move to like another state just to get out, just to see the world, and then that state will enact policies regarding like you can't just take all of the money from your kids, and they'll be like, you know, we want to switch it up a bit. We want to go somewhere else. So, you know, we're moving conveniently. No reason. Oh, what's that? There's a new law. I didn't see that. Anyway, yeah, moving out of the house, just, you know, another day in the life. The magic of The Wizard of Oz is inseparable from its labor history. The film is a triumph of imagination and craftsmanship. It's also a record of exploitation and pain. L. Frank Baum's dream of a uniquely American fairy tale gave way to a Broadway spectacle that replaced Toto with a cow. A decade later, a slapstick silent film rebranded Dorothy as a princess, and then MGM turned the story into a Technicolor fever dream. The studio gambled millions to outdo Disney's Snow White, and in the process, inflicted physical and psychological harm on its cast. Judy Garland would struggle with addiction and heartbreak for the rest of her life, while Buddy Ebsen's lungs never fully recovered from the powdered aluminum he inhaled. Margaret Hamilton carried scars from her burn for the rest of her life. But as a work of art, the film endured. The tiny cheer of Munchkin voices and the gleam of the yellow brick road are undeniably iconic and continue to captivate audiences, even as the industry slowly grapples with the tragedies that built it. Most recently, the film has been playing at the Sphere in Las Vegas, being introduced to audiences in an entirely new way almost 100 years later. From Buster Keaton's broken neck to the helicopter crash on Twilight Zone, from Brandon Lee's fatal misfire to the death of Helena Hutchins, these stories remind us that the yellow brick road is filled with hazards. When you hear Judy Garland's beautiful rendition of Somewhere Over the Rainbow, it's just that much sadder knowing it came from a child who never really got to be one. It's just one of many stories, some other examples I talked about of disasters happening on set. There was that old movie Roar where the lion, I think, killed 2 people and attacked nearly every member of the cast and crew. There was that horrible accident with the cable that snapped shooting Transformers 3. Obviously love filmmaking, I love the process, I love the final product of movies, but it's a shame that so much had to go wrong for some things to go right. I say that like only a few movies went right. You know what I mean. But thankfully, for the most part, we seem to have learned from a lot of these mistakes. Hopefully we can catch the other ones before they show up in the future. But either way, hopefully you found this somewhat interesting, a little look into the dark side of film history, and I think that's really cool, and we just want to say thank you for watching. I've thought about covering these stories before over on the main channel.
As Keir Starmer has slowly been walked off the proverbial plank, the question of the UK's relationship with the EU has once again risen to the fore, as his potential successors have tried to charm Labour's overwhelmingly Europhilic party membership. Former UK Health Secretary Wes Streeting, the first cabinet member to move against Starmer, said last month he wanted to one day rejoin the EU, while Andy Burnham, Starmer's presumed successor, has said he wants to rejoin and expects it to happen in his lifetime. Unsurprisingly, this has sparked some excitable headlines about the UK maybe rejoining the EU. So in this video, we thought we'd explain why, as popular as the idea might be, it isn't going to happen anytime soon. Recent elections in Denmark, Slovenia, Bulgaria and Hungary have shaken up the state of European politics, with major new trends emerging. We dissect these elections in the latest issue of our magazine, as well as explaining what's changing in Europe. That's just one of 80 pages in the magazine, because there's more in Too Long than you'd expect. Purchase your copy by clicking the link in the description. So there were basically two big reasons to be sceptical of the UK rejoining the EU anytime soon. The first is that, while headline polls sometimes suggest that Brits are keen to rejoin, when you dig into the data, the picture quickly starts to look a lot more mixed. A YouGov poll from earlier this month, for instance, found that an impressive 55% of Brits were apparently in favour of rejoining the EU, while just 34% were opposed to the idea. This is a remarkable level of enthusiasm. Not only does it imply a 20-point lead for rejoin, it's also a higher level of support for accession than in many of the EU's current member states. Another YouGov poll from January, for instance, found that only 45% of French people and 46% of Italians would vote to stay in the EU if a referendum were held. However, if you ask Brits whether they would like to rejoin the EU but without the opt-out the UK previously enjoyed, in other words, joining not only the EU but also the Eurozone and the Schengen area, which the EU would almost definitely insist upon as part of any new accession bid, then support falls to just 35%, with only 17% of Brits saying they would strongly support rejoining on these terms. Conversely, 43% of Brits would oppose rejoining on these terms, with 30% of Brits saying they'd strongly oppose this. Support would presumably fall even further once Brits realised that, along with the opt-outs, there would also be essentially zero chance of the UK negotiating another so-called rebate, the financial mechanism negotiated by Margaret Thatcher that reduced the UK's contributions to the EU budget. The rebate was a pretty incredible deal for the UK. It essentially reduced the UK's net contributions by about 2/3 in an average year. This would imply that, if the UK were to rejoin, its net contributions to the EU budget would essentially triple. And that's before you account for the fact that the EU budget has grown dramatically since Brexit. Similarly, you would expect support to fall even further once Brits realise that rejoin would potentially be as long and arduous a process as Brexit was. After all,
innovation. That makes Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent happy because it means more revenue into our coffers. Mr. Secretary, great to see you.
Good to see you all.
Just Mr. Secretary, do you want to get tapped?
We apologize.
I'm pretty sure we know he can handle himself by the way he's handled the first year and a half. He's the one guy that punches back.
I can take Brian. I don't know if I can, Mark.
I don't know how.
In today's modern technological age, most human beings are literally spoiled with sources of entertainment. I mean, the fact that we have an acronym for the feeling of missing out, or FOMO, is probably a perfect example of the wealth of choices that are available to humanity these days, and that's not even counting what you can do with like a simple iPad. And yes, I know, I am a father who currently has a 7-year-old at the time that I'm making this, and we have to be very careful with what we do with such things because of obvious reasons that you see nowadays with iPad kids. That right there is something that is a problem for the modern day. The vast majority of modern history, even after the Industrial Revolution, there was pretty much one source of entertainment that was so popular that they had to make it an act that would tour around the world. In a time when many people would never really leave the town that they were born in unless they were sent off to fight a war, this show was the only kind of source of entertainment that you could get across the world that most people would ever really get to see. I'm speaking, of course, about the circus. These were spectacles that could contain acts of daring trapeze artists, exotic animals, extraordinary strongmen, and we'll probably say odd individuals, and were put on by showmen. The greatest of which, or at least probably the most famous now that we're aware of, is P.T. Barnum. Now, this is going to be his story that we're going to be talking about here today, as well as that of the circus in general. But in order to be able to tell that, as we do here on the History of Everything, first we're going to have to jump into a metaphorical time cannon and blast off through the centuries to land safely in the net of context. Is that enough puns for you yet from the very beginning? I can already see the dislike bar on YouTube right now. With that, my friends, let's go ahead and get started. Ah, yes, and simultaneously, I also did want to say that if you want to support my channel, considering how many topics on here have a tendency to get demonetized or punished by YouTube's algorithm, you must support me by checking out my very sweet merch, featuring the new one that we have here, Gladbod, which has a historically accurate gladiator body. Something that I apparently have and am actually trying to get rid of a little bit. And besides that, if you want to go on an adventure with me, you can do so by joining us on one of our group trips. Currently, we have a couple spots that are available to China, as well as Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania. So we have a Baltic Christmas trip, and then we have a Chinese Great Wall adventure. So we're going to be having an absolute blast at the end of this year of 2026, going into 2027. All of that is linked down in the description below. So thank you. To begin, the origins of circus as we know it today, kind of, you could say, started in ancient Rome. Yes, there were a variety of different societies across Earth that would have their own entertainment spectacles, especially ones involving animals, but the ones with Rome are exactly where we even get the name circus from in the first place. These initial bouts of entertainment would consist of horse and chariot races, along with staged battles, gladiatorial combat, and displays of trained animals. More than likely, at this time, also, there would be a few Christians that were eaten by tigers and lions, but no, you can't really make an omelet without, I guess, committing a number of hate crimes. That is kind of the whole thing for the ancient world. Now, the reason that I bring this up in the first place is that similar to what you would see, arguably almost 2,000 years later, the circus of that time was really the only public spectacle at which men and women were not exactly separated. And oftentimes, many of these events, in the case of like gladiatorial games, were open to the public for free to go to placate them. The earliest circus in Rome was the Circus Maximus, I guess you could say, which, yes, there were a variety of different circuses that were constructed. When finished, it could receive, according to history, around 250,000 people in it, was 400 meters long and 90 meters wide, which is ludicrously big considering what we're talking about for ancient times. You also have the Circus Flaminius, Circus Neronis, and Circus of Maxentius that are other famous circuses of the Roman era, but pretty much anytime someone talks about the Circus of Rome, they're talking about the Circus Maximus. That is the majority of what it is that you would talk about. But even when I talk about that, it is not the circus as we know it today. Even the idea of it, it pretty much only shares the name. The circus as we know it today is something that began in England during the 1700s. You had an individual by the name of Philip Astley, who was possibly, maybe, we're not going to say definitively, the great relative, perhaps, of someone who is never going to give you up. Maybe, can't say for certain. But this was a cavalry officer who would open an amphitheater in Lambeth, London on April 4th, 1768. Now, his intention of doing this was to use the amphitheater to display his horse riding tricks, which I will say from the very get go, he didn't invent the concept of trick horse riding. That is something that has gone back through a number of societies for thousands of different years. But you could definitely argue that in the 1700s, he was an individual who helped to perfect it at his venue, and at his venue was the first place that was specifically built for that exact purpose. He called his arena the Circle, but over time it began to be referred to by the Roman term for the word circle, which is circus. That's where that originates. Now, Astley was among the first to discover that if you have two horses that are running circles in a ring, that the centrifugal force created by turning is around enough to keep a man standing on the horse's back, which would allow them to do a variety of tricks, and this would create a very dazzling show. It made trick horse riding one of the circus's oldest kind of attractions. As time went on, Astley would continue to go on to build 18 more of these circuses throughout Europe. At the same time, all of these circuses would take place in specifically made buildings for them. The tents that we think of when it comes to circuses, that is something that actually appeared significantly later. It is not something that was from the very beginning. But okay, at this point, we're pretty much just talking about trick horse riding. What exactly develops next? Well, if we want to think about the first modern circuses or great combined shows that are being put on, the first modern of these, you could argue, in the United States was one that took place in Philadelphia. It was founded by John Bill Ricketts on April 3rd, 1793, and it was called the Circus of Pepin and Brechard. It would tour from Montreal to Havana down in Cuba in the first 2 decades of the 19th century. And they would build many circus buildings along the way. But again, when I say that, I'm still talking about buildings. At what point does the big famous tents come in, you may wonder, because all of these are talking about specifically built arenas. Well, as it turns out, Joshua Purdy Brown was the first individual to really use a large tent for his circus. Maybe there were others that did it, but perhaps they were not necessarily recorded. He is the one that we have knowledge of, and he did it in 1825. You then have Thomas Taplin Cook, who would bring a tent to England in 1838, and this innovation of having a massive tent would allow shows to be able to move between cities rather quickly and easily, to go anywhere, and to stay for pretty much as long or as short as they desired. And they could perform whether it was raining or whether there was sunshine. It didn't matter. It wasn't an outdoor amphitheater, and it wasn't something to where they had to wait to reserve a specific spot. They could just set up the tent, and boom, there you go. With this kind of flexibility, Brown's show was able to perform and have an income 6 days per week, which was a really big deal. Most places couldn't put on anything like that. And because tents were easier to use, they would slowly replace circus buildings, retrofitted buildings, and open spaces. And then, the entire time that all this was happening, all along the way until they got to this point, various different circuses would go and add their own types of entertainment, and then again, by this time, they would effectively build a consensus on what were exactly the essential elements of any circus. Which you may then wonder, okay, what exactly is a circus anyway? What does it mean? What is it that people expect to actually be there? Well, we have a list for you, actually. The ingredients of any successful circus of the 19th century were aerial acts, which were performances that would take place up in the air and require strength, agility, flexibility, balance, and grace. Aerial acts would include such performances as the trapeze and aerial hoop, as well as aerial contortion and silk ribbons. At the same time that they had that, it was expected that you would have acrobatics, which could include acts of physical strength, balance, and agility, stuff that was oftentimes performed on the ground or on varying different apparatuses, such as on trampolines or teeter boards or other such things. Common acrobatic skills would include hand balancing, tumbling, contortion, and partner acrobatics such as acrobalance. Also then, beyond the ability to manipulate one's own body, came the ability to manipulate other things. You had object manipulation, which would involve controlling and manipulating objects with skill and precision, which examples of this would be like, juggling, hula hooping, staff spinning, plate spinning, that sort of thing. These were the basics that you could kind of expect as just a general act among people. But I know from the very beginning when it is that I'm using this terminology that we are using the very specific terms, so hold on to your vocabulary because we have to whip out the dictionary for this next category. You have equilibristics, which include skills of performers that would use their balance and coordination in acts like tightrope walking, unicycle riding, slackline, stilt walking.
Chief Foreign Correspondent Trey Yingst joins us live in Tel Aviv with the very latest. Trey.
Our story begins inside of the Jedi Council chambers as Qui-Gon Jinn, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and the young Anakin Skywalker have gathered here after Anakin's solo test inside of these very chambers. His abilities were undeniable. He was able to recognize all sorts of shapes on Windu's tablet, which wasn't exactly the litmus test to determine whether or not someone can be a Jedi, but rather to just ensure someone who has the Force is actually able to find it within themselves to focus it on the task at hand. To Qui-Gon, watching this boy be the first human to not only complete a pod race but win a pod race was more than enough proof, but he understood that the Council was not on Tatooine to witness the miracle. Qui-Gon understood that the Council has its ways, and he was not one to interfere with these ways, so long as the desired result came to him in the end. If the Council were to deny Anakin's training, Qui-Gon would likely leave the Jedi Order and train him anyways, at least after the Naboo mission, because he felt like it was what the Living Force was calling him to do. He was at peace with whatever the Council decided, but in all honesty, he did fully expect the Council to allow Anakin to be trained. The rising darkness in the galaxy has finally decided to emerge on Tatooine with that Zabrak warrior. After basically Yoda's entire lifetime, the Sith would not just randomly emerge on Tatooine without a reason. The Naboo plot was all a part of the dark side currents of the Force, and this warrior wanted the Queen dead. But to Qui-Gon, the Sith truly emerging as soon as he found this boy was even more of a sign from the Force that young Anakin would be the one to shape the future of the galaxy, one way or another. Yes, accepting Anakin into the Order would break tradition, but these were going to be untraditional times. So as the trio of Skywalker, Jinn, and Kenobi stood together, it was Mace Windu who leaned forward, and said that Anakin is strong in the Force, and he is to be trained. A weight was lifted off Qui-Gon's shoulders that he didn't even know was there. He bowed his head, thanking the Council for this, and saying that he will be resuming his mission with the Queen and bringing her back to Naboo. But the Council members all looked to each other. Then they would dismiss Skywalker and Kenobi, leaving only Qui-Gon in the center of the Council. And once it was just him and the Council, Mace continued, telling Qui-Gon that their feelings about Anakin have not changed. The dark side does surround him. His thoughts do dwell on his mother, and that will never change. The way he grew up, in the harsh conditions of slavery, shaped his outlook on life. He will be powerful, but he will also be violent, unstable, and could be a threat to the entire galaxy. Qui-Gon simply asked why the Council would allow his training if they truly believe he will turn out this way. Qui-Gon looked from Windu to Yoda, Plo Koon, Mundi, Yaddle, Sazy, and the rest, and they all held the same look of uncertainty. But Yoda then said that he is to be trained because the Council trusts in Qui-Gon's judgment and his ability to handle Anakin's special circumstances. Yoda admitted that he has sensed the rising darkness, and perhaps it is time for some unconventional tactics for this Jedi Order. And then Plo Koon spoke up, telling Qui-Gon that his mission with the Queen of Naboo has concluded. He will now stay on Coruscant with Anakin to begin his training of the boy. And Plo Koon said that he will be taking over the mission, along with the Padawan, Obi-Wan Kenobi. And for Kenobi, this mission will be his trial to determine if he is ready for knighthood. Qui-Gon would accept this, and he would thank the Council. And so, Qui-Gon would begin training the boy, while Plo Koon, Obi-Wan, and the Queen returned to Naboo with everyone else to finish the mission of getting rid of the Trade Federation. Qui-Gon would allow his concern for Obi-Wan to pass into the Force, knowing he was capable of handling himself, and he would put his full focus onto Anakin. The two of them would walk the halls of the temple together, and in every room, Qui-Gon would have Anakin close his eyes and focus on the currents of the Force. Inside of the training rooms, there was frustration, pride, joy, and a hint of anger as a young Padawan was knocked to the ground. Qui-Gon felt it too, but he assured Anakin that everyone felt a bit of anger, but the Jedi must learn to let it go. And moments later, Anakin felt the anger from the Padawan begin to fade. It was something Anakin looked forward to learning. In the Room of 1,000 Fountains, there was feelings of calm, serenity, and of curiosity, as Jedi sunk into deep meditations for days or weeks at a time, to find themselves and find their own inner peace. In the archives, Anakin felt restlessness. He felt desire for Jedi to understand more, and he felt power. Qui-Gon told Anakin that power likely comes from the restricted archives, where hundreds of holocrons and ancient texts, written and recorded by Jedi and Sith, reside for masters to access. Every room was so mystical to Anakin. Every Jedi he walked by felt the same, and yet very different in the Force. But none quite felt like Qui-Gon. Where most of the Jedi, including the Council Masters, radiated peace and comfort, they also did carry a deep, colder feeling far beneath the surface. It was how they maintained their stoic, emotionless state, but Qui-Gon felt only warm and welcoming. This tour of the temple went on for hours, but as they walked by the Tree of Life, Anakin suddenly felt dizzy as he was trying to feel the Force. Qui-Gon told Anakin that perhaps it is time they rest. His mind has been hard at work for a long time. But Anakin said it was not tiredness that he felt, it was conflict. Qui-Gon knew that Anakin missed his mother, and being surrounded by so much light in the Force surely reminded him of her. But then, a moment later, former Jedi Master Dooku came up to them. He was visiting Coruscant today, and Anakin was introduced to the man who trained Qui-Gon Jinn. The three of them walked together for a bit, and Dooku admitted that he was surprised by the Council's decision to allow Anakin to be trained after Qui-Gon told him everything about Anakin. And Qui-Gon just said that the tides may finally be shifting within the Council. Dooku let out a scoff, and then he said that he must be going, but he does hope that Plo Koon can complete the Naboo mission. But if Qui-Gon's ravings about Obi-Wan are true, this mission will soon result in victory for the Republic. And out on Naboo, the Gungans were convinced by Plo and Padme to fight for Naboo. The great battle was underway in the plains, but Plo Koon quickly came to understand one thing for certain. Nothing can be accomplished as long as the droid control ship is still operational in space. So, as the two Jedi and the Naboo team entered the hangar, Plo immediately took to the skies with the Naboo pilots, as he instructed Obi-Wan to escort the Queen to the throne room to arrest Gunray. If Qui-Gon were here, he likely would have stayed with Obi-Wan and the Queen, suspecting the mysterious Dark Warrior from Tatooine could be here. But Plo was not thinking about Maul. He took to the skies, and Obi-Wan was the lone Jedi standing at the steel doorway as it opened, revealing Darth Maul as the Sith apprentice ignited both sides of his red saber. Obi-Wan ordered the Queen to go the other way, and he stood alone with Maul. The two of them had no history. They only knew that this was light versus dark, and both of them were serving a higher purpose. Maul had studied Obi-Wan, and Obi-Wan assumed as much. So, he immediately went on the offensive, throwing off what Maul thought to be true about him. They slashed at each other, moving into the silver refinery room, with the long bridges overlooking a never-ending abyss below them. Maul moved with power behind every swing, but it was measured as to not use all of his energy. Obi-Wan was switching between the aggression of Form 4, then immediately into the defense of Form 3, seamlessly bending them together to keep Maul guessing. But Obi-Wan never had an opening, because Maul's form of pure aggression, even while backpedaling, was unlike anything Kenobi had fought in training duels. And eventually, the two of them reached the reactor room, the smaller area, and Maul finally found his advantage, cutting through Kenobi's blade, then kicking the young Jedi back towards the ledge. And for just a second, Maul allowed himself to breathe and relax, as Kenobi flailed away over the edge. But Obi-Wan then reached out, pulling Maul towards him with the Force. Maul crashed into Kenobi, and together, both of them would fall down the reactor pit to what was assumed to be certain death by both of them. And up in space, Jedi Master Plo Koon, perhaps the best pilot in the galaxy, concluded that the only way to destroy this control ship was from the inside. So, he did what Anakin may have accidentally done, flying his Naboo fighter into the ship, moving through the large halls, and firing right into the fuel cells to escape just as the entire thing erupted. Naboo would celebrate victory as the Queen and her team arrested Gunray, while the Gungans saw the droids be shut down. But as everyone came together to celebrate, there was no sign of Obi-Wan, nor the Sith warrior he fought against. But in the depths of Naboo, Obi-Wan slowly began to wake up, inside a pool of water and trash. This was where basically all the waste of Naboo went, and Obi-Wan decided not to think about everything in here. It was a miracle he was alive, and as he looked up, he saw a Lotho Minor junkyard transport ship making its way towards him, clearing out this reactor area. He began moving towards the edge of this long pool, but as he moved, Obi-Wan noticed Darth Maul floating unconscious near him. Obi-Wan turned away to keep moving, knowing that Maul was going to be scooped up by this transport and taken to Lotho Minor. But then Obi-Wan closed his eyes, cursing the compassion that Qui-Gon taught him, and he moved back to Maul, grabbing his unconscious body and throwing it onto the surface, just before the trash transport could pick up the area where he and Maul had landed. Both of them were now stuck deep in this waste area with no way out. Obi-Wan's left leg was broken from the fall. He couldn't jump up to the trash transport as it left. And when Maul woke up, he was astounded that Kenobi did not only not kill him, but he seemed to have rescued him. And both of Maul's legs were broken. The pain for both of them was immeasurable, and their only hope was to wait for their masters to come and find them. All they had down here was each other, and after an hour of silence, Maul asked Obi-Wan why he saved him. Obi-Wan simply said it was the right thing to do. It is what his master taught him to do. Maul sneered at this, saying he never would have saved Obi-Wan. But Obi-Wan simply said that he must not have had a very good master then. Maul replied coldly, telling Kenobi that his master is the most powerful being in the galaxy. He will be here shortly to save him. Obi-Wan said they will see. And so, after a full day down here, the emergency doors finally opened from the outside of the facility. As light seeped into the room, it was Plo Koon and Qui-Gon who came to the rescue. Obi-Wan told Maul to come with them, but Maul told Obi-Wan to leave him or kill him. he will not be going. His master will be here for him soon. And so Obi-Wan did indeed leave Maul here,